Welcome back to Eurozone. I'm coming at you live from Amsterdam on the 31st of May 2026. We have a lot of interesting topics to discuss. Coming right up now in a few minutes is an interview live with one of the Sumud Flotilla crew members who was kidnapped in international waters by Israel and taken to one of Israel's detention camps, also known as a torture chamber. And breaking news on Eurozone. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a bit stressed because this is a breaking story. I don't get those very often because we're still quite a small channel, but this is quite literally breaking news that the Western media refuses to cover. I'm going to be talking with Matilde, who claims that she was shot in the leg by the IDF, and we're not talking rubber bullets, by a real metal bullet. I have seen the photos of the injury caused by that metal bullet, and I can assure you that no rubber bullet could penetrate the skin in that way. So by what I can tell and verify, that does appear to be a steel bullet, which, sorry, I don't know if it's steel, but a metal bullet that she was shot by. So she's going to be joining us shortly to discuss that. Then we're going to go into Iran because, of course, Donald Trump has now backed out of Iran, which is quite the unexpected move. I myself, just 4 weeks ago, was telling you on this broadcast that the war was going to escalate. Turns out he's going to de-escalate, so we're going to reflect a little bit, figure out what I got wrong and why. Of course, we're going to look at the wider plan from the US, how they're competing against China after the last China summit where the two parties met, and everything they're doing in South America. We're going to get into Bolivia, Cuba. Both of these countries are about to get invaded by the Americans, so there's a lot of stories there to cover. We will get into, I'm also going to do a wider piece on the Sumud Flotilla. I don't think Israel can ever recover from this PR disaster that they brought about themselves. So if you want to know my take on that, stick around. And we have a few more videos at the end of just police brutality around Palestinians in the Netherlands. So, you know, your classic European headlines. This is Eurozone. We don't take any money from anyone. No political groups, no advertisers. No country, no nothing. I don't even take money from you, the viewers. I do this purely for the love of the game. I've spent the last 6 hours in my house trying to set up and research for this. So if you do enjoy the hot takes on this channel, if you do enjoy someone from Europe talking with an honest voice without being a sellout to the corporate lobby or the Israeli interest, then make sure you subscribe and share this wide. Great. Now that we got all of that out the way, let me set up a meeting link and we're going to invite Matilde on. I know she's standing by and waiting. So if she's watching this back, I very much appreciate her patience because it took a little bit longer than expected to set up. I'm just going to send a link here and we'll be ready to join. Perfect. I see that they're online. I got in contact with Matilde through Wasim. Those of you who know, Wasim helped me start this channel a long time ago. That's also why I find this news to be verifiable. This is from my own contacts that I'm getting this breaking story. So let's see if they join, and then we can start the conversation. Let me put my headphones on so I can hear what they're gonna say. And yeah, if there's anyone joining us live, make sure to drop a message in the chat. I read all of them out loud because usually we don't have that many viewers live. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions and I will answer them. I always do, even if we disagree politically. So, okay, let's admit Matilde here.
Oh,
hello, hello.
hi. Hi.
How's it going?
It is good. I am in Centraro.
Yeah.
We are moving. We have some boats that's still here, and I just arrived back from my brother. I was in Sweden at my brother home,
Yeah.
and I came back here, and we have now Intilak. It's a new project, and would be nice if you could also help with this. But
Yeah.
now we have Matilda here, and what happened to her is not really shared wide. No one done anything
Yeah.
about that, and it's very nice if you have her and you can talk to her. And we try to make the testimony for her was very important, and I trust only you, man, to do
Yes.
that.
Thank you, Wasim. You know, we have a long history here on Eurozone talking together, and I'm
Yes,
very happy you
yes.
can bring this breaking story to me. And of course, I will do my absolute best to give this the right coverage that it deserves, because it's
Yeah,
quite a shocking story.
I have a 21%. I hope it will be enough
Let's see how far we
for you,
get.
but yeah. Okay.
All right, and Matilde, we were just catching up before, but let me
Yeah.
introduce you officially now to the live stream. Um, this is Matilde. She was on the last Sumud Flotilla, the last wave, and yeah, you're gonna have quite the story to tell. Is there anything you want to say before we get properly started? Is there any Instagram page or the likes that you want people to get updates from?
Not really. I'm not really good for from social media, so no. I think I'm alright, and I hope I'm gonna be efficient
Perfect.
on my answer.
Okay. And just before I start, are you French by chance? Just judging off the accent. Okay.
Of course.
Perfect. So can I just introduce you as a French member of the Sumud Flotilla?
Of course.
All right. Perfect. I'm gonna do a quick intro and then we'll get started with the questions.
Okay.
All right. A few weeks ago, 400 European citizens were kidnapped on international waters by the Israeli Defense Forces. They were brought from their boats that they were sailing on as part of the Sumud Flotilla on a humanitarian aid mission to Gaza. They were brought off of those boats into Israeli captivity. Along the way, they also went through a rough transfer inside of Israeli military vessels. They spent a total of 48 hours under Israeli captivity, and during that time, they themselves boasted and publicized about the horrific conditions that they put the Sumud Flotilla crew through. And some of those horrible conditions caught on camera include just physical abuse, a lot of beatings, a lot of humiliation. But what the Western media is not covering is that what the Western media is not covering are some of the more gruesome details around sexual assault, particularly, and also the extent of the torture. So joining me now, I have Matilde, who's a French citizen who was part of the last round of the Sumud Flotilla, who was kidnapped by Israel, and who has quite a horrific story to share with us around the shooting of a metal bullet. So this is not the rubber bullets that you're used to seeing. Yeah, I think we'll just start it there, Matilde. So thank you so much for joining the Eurozone broadcast. Can I just start by asking you, at what point were you intercepted by Israel, and what was that experience like? Just at the first point of contact between the Sumud boats and the Israeli Navy.
Okay. So we were part of the first boat to be intercepted. Because we were divided in a different pod, and they came by the east side. So we were at the wrong place, and we were really surprised because normally it's happening in the night, and that time it happened in the morning. So we were not expected to be intercepted this time. So it's happened really fast because we just saw on the horizon, we saw the warship. Then very fast we saw two ribs coming very quick to our boats. So at this moment we start to put the speed very fast to try to escape, but it was already too late. So there is two ribs came, one of each side of the boat, and they start to put guns on us. So everybody gets down on the ground because we were afraid to be shot. They shoot on the Starlink and camera stuff. It was just up of our heads, so we were a bit afraid at this time to get shot, but that didn't happen. Then they just jumped on the boat, and that start like that. They directly start to take two crew members and to be very violent with them because they wanted to know who is the captain.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so you were boarded by the IDF, and immediately, would you say the violence started right away? I mean, what was the first sign of hostility that you experienced?
Directly, when they jumped on the boat, directly they put the guns on you. Of course, everybody had the hands up. Then they directly wanted to know, because they didn't know, it seems that they didn't know how to drive the boat. So they wanted directly to know who was the captain. And me, I was one of the two captains. And we were agree on the fact to not answer. So they start to take two people who were just crew members, and they start to be very violent with them. They use the electric guns, taser, on one of them, and the other one they tied them his hand very very tight, and they put him on the belly, and they start to put them feet on his face, and they were still asking who was the captain, and they starting to be more violent again. So at this moment, I just asked them what they wanted me do with the boat.
Yeah, yeah. So immediately it seems that as soon as they were not able to get what they wanted, which was a response from you about who the captain is, immediately they turn to violence. Immediately they start with their tactics of abuse. Okay, I know there were some reports that approaching the boat already, before they even got on the boat, they were shooting at some of the vessels. Did you experience that yourself? Did you see any shots fired coming from the Israeli forces towards the boats?
Of course. Before to jump on the boat, they were still on the ribs on the dinghy, and they shoot on us before to come aboard.
Okay, and once they then were able to take control of the ship, where did you go after that? Was there a military vessel that you had to board in order to get to mainland Israel?
Okay, so before that, we were still on our sailing boat. They took us one by one with the hands tied behind your back. They bring you at the front of the boat just to see what you have in your pocket. And before to be disembarked before to go on them boat, I asked almost 15 times to be able to grab our personal stuff. They never accept. So we left without nothing, just with our passport in the pocket, nothing else. Then they putting you on this rib and they bringing you on this big warship. Actually, it was two big warships, but I just saw one of them. Yeah.
Okay, and then how were the conditions like in the warship? Because I understood that already at this point people were tied with their hands behind their back. Some people were made to lie down in water, and I even heard one account that they were afraid to suffocate because they were being forced to stay on the ground with their face pressed against the ground in an area that was flooded.
Yeah.
Can you give a little more detail on the experience there in the boat transfer?
Okay, so actually, it was two different treatments between the two boats. The boat I was on was the more kind, I would say. But I know that the comrades from the other warship boat was really more bad, had really more bad treatment. So when you arrive on this boat, they are you still have the hands tight. They are taking off all your clothes. They just let you with the minimum that they can. Then they taking your passport and they just throwing you in this space. It's like a space of 20 meters long by 6 meters large. And we were about 180 people in this side. So we didn't experience like the other comrades on the other boat, because the second boat was really, I don't know, but really different treatment, really worse than our boat.
So there was different layers, let's say, of treatment at this stage.
Yeah.
At some point, you then arrive at Ashdod, if I'm not mistaken, in the port of Ashdod. And how was the experience there? Was that where the brutality of the Israelis really escalated?
Okay, so before to arrive in Ashdod, we spent 2 days on the warship, so 48 hours. And me, I've been shot on this warship boat.
Okay.
So
Sorry, so just a misunderstanding on my part then. The actual transfer was a lot longer than some of the earlier interceptions. It seems like in that case Israel was holding you on international waters off the coast of Israel in order to prolongate the brutality, or let's say the physical pressure on the military boats. So yeah, sorry, but please do continue then of the experience, because I think you were getting into the main event, which is that the shooting that then eventually happened on the boat.
okay, yeah. So we were still on the way to go to Israel, but we wasn't sure about the direction we were going to, because we were imagining maybe to be released in Cyprus or in Crete, like the first, like 10 days ago. Then so I was on this warship, and I was just walking in this little space that you have, and there is a little door that they are throwing food and water, and not food, just cold little piece of bread and some few bottle of water, and the new people arriving. And I was just walking around this area, and they are upstairs on like a platform with the guns on you, and one of those guys just said me to move away from this place. I didn't have time to move myself, that they just shoot on me. And so I start running on the other side of the area, and I realized at this time that I was bleeding on my leg a lot. So there is a Spanish girl, doctor. She just cut my pant, and at this moment we realized that I had a big injury, a big hole, bleeding a lot. So everybody started to panic, and we scream on them that we need urgently a doctor, because it was really close of the artery of the leg.
Yeah, if I can just jump in. So unfortunately, the injury is so severe that I cannot show the photos here on the live stream, because I think I will get taken off of YouTube immediately. But just to describe it a bit, I mean, it is a complete open wound on the lower third of the thigh, outer thigh, right above the knee. And as you mentioned there of course there's a vital artery that runs down the leg there, and the wound being so open and so deep as it would be, you know, when getting shot, of course that can very quickly turn to a life-threatening injury. And I don't know if I missed any details there, but can you describe a bit the severity of the injury? How deep was the wound? Because I'm sure the photos I got are from far after the incident.
Yeah, the photo that you have was took like 4 or 5 days after the injury, so it was already start to get, let's say, better.
Yeah.
So the hole was about, I will say, between 1.5 and 2 centimeters deep, by 4 centimeters large.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you find any bullet remains or shrapnel inside of your leg, or was it or did the bullet let's say graze and go out?
No, so I wasn't sure of it, because it's a kind of bullet. It's not a rubber bullet. It's kind of bowl, like of tissue bowl, but we fill with lot of little metal balls inside. So when it's touching you, it's like exploding in a lot of pieces. So I wasn't sure to have some little balls in my leg.
Yeah.
And it's only when I arrived in Istanbul, so 4 days after, that they made the X-ray radio to look if I had some pieces inside, and I didn't found nothing.
Okay. So I guess what you're describing there on the bullet, and you were telling me before it went live that you have a suspicion of what sort of bullet it was, but what you're describing there is sort of a very small buckshot. that essentially upon impact explodes, and has these smaller metal casings with small explosives that upon impact just kind of disperse, which is very different from the rubber bullets, right? We've seen a lot of, or at least I have seen a lot of images from the Sumud Flotilla crew with injuries from rubber bullets, which are just larger round bruisings, but very rarely do they cause a lesion in the skin and actually penetrate through the body. So this one, I can assure you, is a whole different story. So it might not be a full, let's say, round that you would use in a normal handgun, but it is still quite an escalation and a lot more deadly than just a rubber bullet. Can you tell me what you were saying before the live stream around the two types of bullets that you saw and why you think it was the bullet that you're describing?
Yeah, on the ground we found two types of bullet. So one like long and plastic rubber bullet, and the other one was this kind of little bag filled with metal balls. And when they took me to the, it's not nursery, but my comrades screamed to see a doctor urgently because I was bleeding a lot, and they took me alone in a little place. And at this moment, there was one of the soldier playing in front of me with the bullet in his hand.
Right.
So it's the first time that I was able to see what kind of bullet it was, and yeah, I asked him if it was this bullet who shot me, and he said me yes, but I'm really not sure.
Okay.
Finally.
Okay. That's also just highlighting a bit there the sadism, right, of the soldier just playing with the bullets in front of you, just to kind of highlight that they have the power to do this, I guess. What was the response like from the Israeli forces? Did they respond to this call for medical help? And what sort of treatment, if any, did you get on the boat?
Okay, I think they were maybe not expecting to have a big injury like this. So I have the feeling that maybe they were surprised
Right.
about my injury. So they came when they saw that from far I was bleeding a lot. They came to take me, and I'm sorry. What was the question?
How if there was any medical treatment or how
Yeah.
the medical treatment was from the Israelis.
Yeah. So of course everybody was dressed like a soldier, so I was able to see only the eyes of everybody. Also for the two doctors, because it was two doctors who took care of me, but they were dressed like soldiers. So yeah, I saw one of them was really sorry for me, and to tell the truth, he took care of me because he was really sorry to see me with a big injury like this. So they gave me some painkiller, and they put in a intravenous. So they put something in my arm to give me some antibiotics and some other substance that finally I'm not sure about what it was. But at this moment, I was very afraid about losing too many blood and about dying. So I just it's crazy, but I just let them do something because I was really afraid about just dying here, and I was screaming on them, and I just scream on them that if something worse happened, they promise me to bring me back somewhere where I can be safe. But it was crazy to ask them that because for sure they will never bring me in a safe place.
Yeah. And as you're saying there, I mean, just the injury. Again, I can't highlight enough how dangerous it is to have an open wound there, so close to the artery, let alone, I mean, bleeding out, of course, but also the infections for which they gave antibiotics, right? That's very severe. If you don't mind, what's going through your head in that moment? I mean, you already talked about a little bit about the fear, and about confronting even potentially that this might be some of your last moments might be on this Israeli ship. How do you cope with that? How does that what's going through your head in that moment?
Um, I was really. It's a good question because with the adrenaline, you not really realizing what happened. I was just very angry with them, so I was not. I was not feeling no fear of. I was not afraid of them. I was just afraid about dying. So it's changing totally the attitude that you have with them, because I was not closing my mouth anymore, and I was screaming on them if I was screaming on someone that I know. So yeah, at this moment, it was just I was more focused on my life, and I was trying to keep calm inside of me, and to have the good reaction. To keep the most. I'm sorry, my English is very bad. Um, yeah, I just wanted to stay alive, so it was my main focus, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so very fight or flight. Um, it, I do think it's very interesting you mentioned that the dynamic changes at that moment, because it was very clear also by the videos that Ben Gavir published that they were using you guys as a sort of propaganda tool to humiliate you on camera, right? To show the whole world that they have the power to do this to anyone around the world, that no one from any country can do activism against Israel. No one from any country can attempt to bring humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza uh, without being in reach of the Israeli torture machine, um, and that they were very deliberately creating propaganda out of treating you guys as what they call terrorists, dehumanizing you, and making a whole show out of the brutality. But then in the moment that brutality crosses the line into life-threatening territory, it seems to me like there was a change in dynamic, or a realization also on their end that the show had gone too far. Is that something that you recognize? Was there any remorse from these people that otherwise seem to be enjoying the pain of others?
Yeah, it's you are crossing the way of many different people from them,
Yeah.
and but a big majority of them are really young, like about I would say 20 years old, very young. And when I spent the whole night in this little place, I saw a lot of young people came to see me, and some of them was asking me some question like, but they were curious about what I'm doing here, if I was paid to do that, and they was trying to convince me about they are the good person, like they were talking about the 7th October, and they were talking about like they are the victims. So I felt at this moment that maybe some of them are the first victims because they are totally brainwashed, and I know it was really weird because those young people was not realizing what was happening. And also I want to say that there is one young soldier came in the night to talk with me, and he said to me that he was really sorry, and he said to me that he is a part of the 5% of Israeli people who's not agree about what's happening now, and he said to me that he just wait to finish the obligatory service military to leave the country, and we didn't had time to finish the discussion that there is a security man, another soldier came violently to take him out from the place because it was forbidden to him to talk with me. But it was really weird to see that they are not all agree about what they are doing.
Yeah, of course. I mean that's one of the tragedies of Israel itself, is that it's also a disaster for the youth in particular, but it's a disaster for the Israelis themselves, right? It's not fun to be it's obviously tragic to be the Palestinian who lives under oppression, but it's also not fun or enjoyable to be the oppressor who has to grow up having to enact this violent personality, right? And what you're saying there is a miraculous story of one of these people being forced into violence, having a moment of realization, or at least opening up to reflect a little bit on their actions, right, and the consequences of their actions, and the pain that they inflicted on another human. I do wonder, do you think that the fact that you are a white person from France was something that allowed them to empathize with you in a way that they might
Yes.
not a Palestinian?
Absolutely, because one of the first questions that they asked me before asking me if I was suffering was where are you from?
Right.
And I really had the feeling that they treat me differently because I'm a French European girl and white girl.
Yeah.
Every places I was bringing to, the first question was where are you from?
Right. Okay, and would you say that you saw harsher treatment towards other flotilla members who were maybe from, let's say, Malaysia or Turkey and so on?
Yeah, every Turkish comrade was really totally beaten and a very bad treatment.
Yeah.
And also I want to speak about this young guy, Meshid. Meshid is from Turkey, and he's the second people on the boat I was on was being shot. He's been shot when we just arrived in Ashdod, and that time they shot him like 1 meter's distance. So because when we arrive in Ashdod, they bring me urgently to the Israel hospital, and when I was in hospital, I saw this young guy coming also, and the hole that he had in his leg was really bigger than mine because he has been shot really close. So yeah, they were really the treatment between white and other nationality like Turkish and Malaysian people was really different and worst.
Yeah, it's just interesting, I guess, to see, or to have it confirmed again and again, the fact that all of this is planned and executed on racial boundaries, right? It really is such a primary aspect of the Israeli occupation and the way they operate. That the color of your skin, the country that you come from, really dictates your humanity, right? And which sort of rights you get and what sort of treatment you get. I don't think we necessarily have to go into more detail after that, because we have gotten so many interviews now and videos from what happened once you arrived in Israel. I guess my only question for that part is, did you see Ben Gavir yourself, and what were you able to read on him and his sort of intentions by filming this video, trying to humiliate you on camera?
So I didn't saw Ben Gavir by myself, but I saw another kind of important person. I'm in the. I was confused, so I didn't know exactly who was this person, but it was one of the only one who don't wear no mask,
Yeah.
and they forced me. I wanted to stay with my comrades, but they forced me to sit on a chair with a big smile, telling me that we are the owners. So they forced me to sit on this chair instead to be on the knees like the other because of my injury. We were filming all along the time. When I was in the hospital, they took some picture of me, and they took those video only in the Ashdod part. But there is a really worst video that they took all along the time, and they were all so happy. A lot of young people laughing, smiling, just having fun about our situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what I was trying to get at there is also the insecurity that the Israeli forces have, and the fact that they constantly need to justify and play up this violence in order to feel some form of security about their own situation, and to put away the fear that they carry all the time, because of the constant military aggressions that they partake in. Um, if you don't mind, to close off here, do you, looking back now, because it's been a few weeks, what sort of reactions have you seen from the European governments that you appreciate, and what sort of reactions have you seen that you think are far from enough, or perhaps even in the complete wrong direction?
Okay. I'm surprised and kind of happy to see that some media talk about us, and the last flotilla was never, from some media, never exposed. So I'm happy to see that, but I think it's not enough. I'm talking about French government, who doing just the minimum.
Yeah.
And I'm now working with some lawyer and some people to push more about on the French government, because, for example, they didn't accept to pay the ticket flight for bring us back in France, and the support from France was really small. But now we are working on it to recognize the treatment that we had as French civilians, and I want to say thank you to the Spanish government who supporting the Palestinian cause, and also like everybody saw, I'm really shocked about Bilbao and Basque country police, the way that they welcome them citizens. So yeah, we still have a lot of work to do, and it's very good that some media are still talking about it, but I know that people are forgetting really fast, and it's really important to keep talking about it and to keep report what we just left, because it was just 3 days of our lives.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that Palestinian people are living worst and for many time.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that same vein of thought, what do you think comes next in your activism? I mean, after the horrors that you experienced, do you see yourself continuing on any future flotilla missions?
Of course, I will. I remember all of those IOF people was telling me, it's a very nice shot. Like that, you will never come back again. And if they are now listening at me, I want to tell them that I will come back. And if I can help for any action on flotilla or on land and supporting people, I will do it. Now I feel stronger than ever, and I really want to keep going on this fight. Of course, if I can help in any case, in any situation, I will. And I will go back if there is another flotilla going to.
Amazing. My utmost respect to you and the rest of the crew. I say this every time at the end of these interviews, but it is really shocking, the trauma you have to deal with by putting yourselves on the line. Of course, it's nothing compared to the Palestinians, but still, voluntarily doing this on behalf of other humans, on behalf of trying to correct the wrongs of our own governments. You know, it's very respectable. You're an inspiration to many people. I can tell you the direct action groups in Amsterdam are growing every week. There's going to be a huge wave here in June coming up, and I'm sure that they look to you for inspiration. So thank you so much for what you do and for recounting it here on Eurozone, and best of luck to your future activism.
Thank you very much for welcoming me, and thank you for everybody to listen to me. And sorry again for my English, and hope to meet you maybe in Amsterdam one day.
Yes, let's do it. All right, Mathilde, I will
Thank you.
I'll write to you after the show, but thank you so much for now, and yeah, let's see if we talk again sometime.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Free Palestine.
Yes, free Palestine. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Mathilde from the Sumud Flotilla crew. If you're watching this live, stick around. We have many, many more topics to get to. That was just the first one. If you're watching this recorded on YouTube, make sure to check out some of the other clips coming out of this live stream. This is what you're watching now is part of a much longer live stream that's probably going to end up being 3 hours. This is the first topic, but we're going to cover more about the Sumud Flotilla in a second, and about a bunch of other topics. Once again, this is a fully independent show. This is full independent media. We are not funded by any political group, country, or corporation. We don't even take money from you, the viewers. We do this purely for the love of the game. So if you do like what you see, if you like hearing a European voice that talks with reason and isn't a corporate sellout or a Zionist sellout, then you've come to the right place, and please share the video around for support. Liking and subscribing is completely free. And that's it for now. Yeah, join the live streams. Cool. Wow, what a grotesque story. That was yeah. It's always hard to hear. I've done so many of these interviews now with the Sumud Flotilla crew, and every single time it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I don't know how else to describe it. One of the first videos I ever did was actually an interview with Tan Safi, who was on one of the earlier ships almost a year ago now, more than a year ago. And that was a big moment for me also, just realizing that, you know, I need to do this media thing full time or as often as I can, because, yeah, we need more people pressing for a free Palestine. Give me 1 second. I'm quickly going to check the audio here to make sure that my microphone sounds good. Ago now, more than a year ago. And that was a big moment for me also, just realizing that, you know, I need to do this media thing. Yeah, I think that sounds good. If not, you let me know in the chat. There's a few people watching, so don't be shy. Ask a question if make sure that my microphone sounds good. And ago now, more than a year ago. Get into the next topic here. Oops, sorry, double audio. We're gonna get into the next topic here in a moment, and I think it's going to be the big one, which is Trump giving up on Iran. So let me take a bite of food. Starving. It's like 10 p.m. I haven't had dinner, and an amazing person made me a very nice dish of mante. Sorry, I know this has nothing to do with politics, but you're watching this live, so you have to endure. You have to endure. Ooh, that's fire. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Freshly made. Not freshly made, but the Turkish shop, they make it fresh, freeze it, you buy it in a plastic bag, take it home, put it in the boiler, add some tomato sauce, garlic, and Greek yogurt, and yeah, this is what you get. Yeah. Amazing. Don't go anywhere. I'm about to start. Just give me a second. And of course, you have to drink your ayran with it. Thank you to the cat for being a light assistant. She knocked over the light in the background, but it's back up. I don't know if the cat's gonna come say hi. There she is. Careful, there's so many cables. That was the cat knocking over the lights in the background. Okay, enough talking about random things. This is the Eurozone broadcast. We do it live for the love of the game. You already know what it is. We're gonna dive into Donald Trump leaving the war in Iran. And guys, I put quite a piece together here, and I have to because I was wrong. I was wrong last time I was sitting in this chair live streaming. I said that Donald Trump would continue the war, and he did not. So I feel like I have some explaining to do, because, you know, as a leftist, you're supposed to be able to predict the future, because we always know what's going on. And I did not predict the future accurately. So, you know, that's on me. And now I have to correct. But I'm going to explain exactly why that is the case, and what between my prediction and the reality here. So yeah, I think get into it. Okay. Donald Trump finally realized that fighting Iran is not worth it. Now, I have to admit, everyone on the left, including myself, has been saying that Donald Trump would never stop bombing Iran and would only ever escalate the war. But we were wrong. It doesn't happen often, but the leftists, the anti-imperialists, we were wrong. In this video, we're going to look at why Donald Trump changed his mind and why we got it wrong, and if the peace agreement will hold. So there's a small caveat there. The peace agreement might not hold, and I might end up being right in the end, that they do a full-scale invasion. But yeah, let me start by saying my apologies, because last time I was sitting in this chair live streaming, I said that there would be an escalation to a full-scale invasion of Iran. Now, that did not happen. Instead, Donald Trump has signed, well, is attempting to sign, it's almost official now, a peace deal with Iran. Iran is the only side of the parties that is holding it up. So Donald Trump has capitulated fully. He is considering giving $300 billion to Iran, and basically signing a deal which is way more favorable to Iran than the Obama nuclear deal. So clearly, something has changed. Clearly, my prediction was wrong, and our logic was flawed. And I think I know what it was. So let's get into it. The Israeli lobby. This is a very powerful group which is responsible for making sure that the Americans, and especially the American president, but any American politician or even media figure, follows the bidding of Israel to a precise T, right? There is no room in American politics to push back on anything that the Israeli agenda demands. However, Trump has just disappointed the Israeli lobby by stopping the war in Iran, by de-escalating. So how did that happen? Because people like me have been swearing to you that Israel would always maintain this stranglehold on American politics and that no American president would ever move a finger against Israel. So here's the truth. Trump loves money and power. Okay? Trump doesn't have any form of spiritual alignment with Israel, some biblical calling to defend Israel, like some of the other warmongers from the Republican Party do. So there is actually a slight difference in his motivation compared to other Republican politicians. And this is where I forgot to put my focus, because this particularity about Donald Trump, that he has no morals other than chasing money and power, actually ended up creating a small rift between Donald Trump and the Israeli lobby. So because Donald Trump is obsessed with money and power, he also loves people who have money and power. In fact, it's the only thing he respects, right? So if you want Donald Trump to respect you, you must portray force. This is why he respects other grand individuals inside of the US. This is why he respects Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin, a lot more than, for example, Macron or Mark Rutte or any of these European dogs, right? When you show weakness to him, he walks over you and abuses you. And when you show strength, he cuddles up to you, trying to leech some of your power, some of your money into his own pockets in order to continue enriching himself, in order to continue grabbing power for himself. So the Israeli lobby has, or had at least, a lot of both. They had a lot of money and a lot of power. Meaning that when Donald Trump was running for president, the first, the second, and potentially soon the third time, he was very happy to cozy up to the Israeli lobby because they had a lot of money and a lot of power. If Donald Trump does the bidding of Israel, or, he buys a lot of favorability from every single media channel in the US, because the media channels are also heavily influenced by the Israeli lobby. If Donald Trump cozies up to Israel, he gets a lot of money for his political campaigns. And just to show that, I have this. Oh God, we're doing this live. Give me one moment. Give me one moment. Let me. This standard stream. Perfect. Let me put this little window capture back. Let me move this here. Give me 1 second, guys. This is live. I forgot to set this up. Okay, here we go. This is me. This is Donald Trump. Let's put it. We can continue it on the side. Something like this. Perfect. Just give me transform. I'm gonna have to cut all of this off from the live. That's crazy. But that happens. So there we go. Donald Trump. This is apactracker.com, by the way. Don't know it. It's a fantastic website where you can track which one of your of your politicians are owned by Israel, basically. And of course, they have a page on the Trump administration. So what you're going to see here is the amount of money that Donald Trump has received from AIPAC. So Donald Trump himself, President of the United States, has received $230 million in independent expenditures and campaign contributions, right? So he has received a lot of money, like a lot of money, in order to run his campaigns from the Israeli lobby. Next up, DJ Vance, right, the vice president. He has received $167,000 from pro-Israeli lobby groups. Marco Rubio, or also known as Narco Rubio, has received, again, upwards of $1 million from the lobby. So all of these people in his administration, and primarily himself, right, 230 million, get a lot of money from the lobby. And on top of that, they also get positive media coverage, right, for being pro-Israel. So all of that was very useful for Donald Trump. As long as supporting Israel gives him more of both, he will continue to do everything Israel says, no matter the cost, right? It could be, that you lose military assets. It could be the price of oil goes up and everything. He would have continued to do Israel's bidding and invaded Iran, as long as the Israeli lobby continued being able to provide him personally with money and power. However, clearly something has changed. And if you're following my logic here, because Trump is attracted to money and power, clearly he must have changed his judgment on how much money and power Israel has today. And I think Donald Trump has made the calculation that a lot of people have been begging him to do, which is that actually supporting Israel in this endeavor in Iran is costly, loses him money, loses him power, instead of gaining, right? And what do I have to back that up? Well, Trump came out with a very weird statement. Now, if you follow Trump, you know that everything he says is blatantly filterless and is very straight from the heart. I'm not saying he's not lying, but he believes what he says. And this is the headline, right, that everyone was reading. Trump says he could run for prime minister in Israel, claiming 99% approval rating. Trump's remarks come as his popularity with American voters continue to plummet, with a new poll showing growing disapproval over Iran war and the economy. So take a look at this little dichotomy. I was hoping to have the clip because it was here before. Have a quick. It's fine. Take a look at this dichotomy, right? So Trump says that he has a 99% approval rating in Israel, making him the most popular politician, right? 99% is like tremendous numbers. And that his popularity in Israel is so large that he could run and win as prime minister. What he is signaling to Benjamin Netanyahu is that, look, I don't need to continue supporting the war in Iran, which is causing my disapproval ratings, right? My approval ratings to plummet in the US, because any pressure that you could put on me through AIPAC, through Israel, I can nullify because I, Donald Trump, am more popular in Israel than you, Benjamin Netanyahu. Donald Trump thinks that he has more clout with the Israeli population than Benjamin Netanyahu. So he is saying here to Benjamin Netanyahu, don't try to pressure me to continue doing things that is plummeting my approval ratings at home, because if you do that, I can do the same to you in Israel. I can run for prime minister in Israel and I'll win, right? That's his logic. So he is kind of, with these statements, nudging at the fact that having support from Benjamin Netanyahu means nothing if you are more popular in Israel than Benjamin Netanyahu, right? He's saying, look, the power is actually in my hands. My hands being Donald Trump. And I think that's no coincidence, because he's also recognizing, right, if you look at the timing here, that Israel no longer has the same influence that they used to. So if Israel did have, right, this influence, if supporting the Israeli agenda converted to more power at home in the US, then his approval ratings would go up, right? Don't forget that every single war that the Americans have started because of Israel or in tandem with Israel led to an increase in the approval ratings of the American president who started that war. For example, when George Bush invaded Iraq, right, his approval ratings went up by a lot. Okay? So that mechanism, which used to be very reliable for American presidents, if I go to war on behalf of Israel, my approval ratings will go up at home, is broken. Not because Israel isn't trying. They're doing the same tactics in the same media channels, using the same Fox News, CNN, and BBC commentators to peddle the same talking points about supporting these wars in the Middle East. But it's simply no longer having any effect. The people no longer care about mainstream media. So the fact that Israel is peddling propaganda on mainstream media is not translating into favorable numbers for Donald Trump at home. The fact that Hassan Piker is more popular than Ben Shapiro means that the youth, the young people like me, are not going to fall for the same war propaganda that our parents did around Iraq or Afghanistan or any of the other wars, Libya, you can go on and on and on. So the influence, the media lobby influence that Israel has, that the military-industrial complex has, is no longer there. And Donald Trump knew this from the get-go, by the way. That's why he ran as an anti-war candidate. That's what really helped him boost his poll numbers in 2016, right? And he thought that, okay, now warming up to Israel with all the power, maybe they can help me get more popular. But he's come to the realization that he always knew, that actually going to war on behalf of Israel is no longer an effective route to gain more power. And just to highlight that, I have to show you this reporting done by the New York Times, right? So the New York Times is notorious for doing propaganda for Israel, right? They covered the lies around October 7th endlessly, constantly talking about how Hamas did a bunch of crimes that in the end they actually did not commit, right? I'm not saying they didn't kill people, but a lot of the gruesome details turned out to be invented by Israel, and it turned out to be more of a projection than a true story. So we're gonna watch this clip here from the New York Times, just to give you an idea, that the Israeli lobby is really losing power, because if it was up to the Israeli lobby, this sort of video would never have been publicized. And in fact, it took the New York Times way too long to come out with this reporting, but it is finally coming out. So take a look here. Sorry, I just realized there was no audio. Give me a second. Put that in. Here we go.
When Israel was attacked on October 7th, 2023, officials were quick to condemn the sexual violence of Hamas.
You've heard of the rape of Israeli women? Where the hell are you?
Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies.
The craziest part is that, so these are the stories I'm talking about in October 7th that were not exactly true, right? Mass rape did not occur on October 7th in the way that Israel claims. They did not behead babies and throw them into ovens in the way that Israel claims. And still, yet, the New York Times is still peddling that lie, by the way. So just as we're going to watch some of the most significant pro-Palestine reporting from the New York Times in the last decade, we still have to acknowledge how skewed they are towards Israel and how much lip service they're paying the Israeli lobby here.
Uses rape as a weapon of war.
Sexual violence as a weapon of war by Hamas.
I went to the West Bank to talk with Palestinians who experienced sexual assault firsthand by Israeli soldiers, settlers, and prison guards. Their harrowing accounts, backed by lawyers, surveys, and international reports, suggest that sexual violence by Israelis against Palestinians is widespread, and that...
Again, I have to say a note. Although I want to give some credit here to Nicholas Kristof the New York Times. These reports have been around for many years. Okay, since 2008, I have known about the sexual violence that the Israeli forces put upon the Palestinians, put them through. So for the New York Times, a professional journalist, to be talking about this in 2026 is scandalous because it is way too late. So good job for going out and verifying that. But you could have made this story in 2014.
That raises the question, where is there revulsion against sexual assault now? I don't see any evidence that Israeli leaders order rape, but they have.
Again, running cover for Israel, right? Saying, I don't see any evidence that the Israeli politicians order rape. So you're telling me that sexual violence by Israel is immensely widespread, is celebrated on national TV, by the way, because the people caught in that scandal, he's going to show it. He's going to show it in this video. The people caught on camera raping, I'm sorry, I have to say it. I know it's on. Raping Palestinians were celebrated later on Israeli national TV after the country of Israel went into a riot because the military was trying to prosecute their own soldiers who were caught on video raping Palestinians. In order to stop that prosecution, the country went into a riot. And to celebrate that the prosecution was nullified by the Israeli government, they went on national television and took off the balaclavas that the Israeli soldiers had been wearing on television, revealed their identity to the Israeli public, and were then celebrated as heroes, not only by the Israeli public, but by Benjamin Netanyahu as well. So there is a clear endorsement from the Israeli government, a clear acknowledgement, endorsement, and lack of condemnation around sexual violence from the Israeli military on Palestinians, right? And I would say that is the most tame conclusion you could arrive at. The most realistic conclusion you can arrive at is that this is systematic and being ordered top down.
Have built a security apparatus where, according to a 2025 United Nations report, sexual violence is a major element in the ill treatment of Palestinians. Prime Minister Netanyahu has called accusations of sexual violence by Israelis baseless, but my reporting suggests that sexual violence has greatly worsened under Netanyahu in recent years. What exactly does this look like? Here's what I found. This is Sameh Al-Sai, a freelance journalist for international news organizations.
اصطحبوني لزنزانة انفرادية. في الزنزانة الانفرادية هاي وأنا مقيد الإجرين والإيدين ومغطى الأعين، رموني على الأرض بوضعية السجود وانتزعوا بنطلوني والبوكسر وبدأوا بعملية اغتصاب بالعصي والجزر بطريقة عنيفة جدا ومؤلمة جدا، والتحرش واللمس أعضاء التناسل.
This poor man is speaking Arabic here. But for those of you that are not watching the video, seeing the subtitles, he is just describing rape inside of Israeli detention being done by Israeli soldiers. And again, this case is from a year ago, if not longer. I remember this case coming up a long time ago, and the fact that the New York Times is reporting on it today is service to him, right? They should have been there a year ago.
بشكل قوي ومزعج ومؤلم جدا.
I spoke to a farmer who recounted how 20 settlers rampaged through Palestinian homes and used a hunting knife to cut off his clothes.
شفت مستوطنين دخلوني من برا الخيمة، خشيت جوا الخيمة، سحبوني المستوطنين في المرابط البلاستيكية هذول، ربطوا على يدي من هان أكثر من مربط على إجري، ضربوني هاي على عيني بوكس، سحبوني جوا هان على الخيمة، صار يكبوا علي تراب، مي وتراب ووتر، خلعوا البنطلون، ربطوا العضو الذكري.
Again, same story. I think this was 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. And again, New York Times shows up way too late to do this interview. And you can read the subtitles for the gruesome details. I won't recount them, but just know that it is explicitly recounting sexual violence.
في المربط البلاستيك شدوه مني شدوه.
The zip ties were still on the ground when I visited. And this is Mohammed Matar, a Palestinian Authority official, who says he was with two other Palestinians trying to protect a Bedouin village under attack from settlers. When the settlers seized them, stripped them, beat them, and he says one tried to rape him with...
Again, video evidence shown right there. And that video evidence has been around for years. Not a single peep from the New York Times, the CNN, CNNBC, or any of the mainstream media in the US.
They stick, and he actually has some evidence of this interaction with the settlers in the form of a photo that the settlers posted to social media.
The settlers posted that photo that you just saw to social media. They are self-reporting this out in the open, right? Inside of Israeli society, it is completely normal, accepted, and endorsed the sexual assault that happens to Palestinians.
One woman, 23 at the time of her detention, told me that she was regularly stripped naked, forcibly bent over, and groped all over her body by male and female guards. One journalist said he had been held down and raped by a dog, a claim...
Again, dogs doing this. I'm sorry, I refuse to say it out loud, but you understand what I'm saying.
...backed by other accounts from prisoners who report they underwent the same thing. I'm appalled by this pattern of abuse, partly because our American tax dollars subsidize the Israeli security forces.
And now he's going to bring it back to how the Americans are subsidizing this whole regime in Israel, right? So the point here, the wider point is that the New York Times coming out and saying, like within a 4-minute clip, by the way, very directly, that the Americans are funding an Israeli regime who is likely involved in systematic statewide sexual abuse against Palestinians, with these gruesome details that they put in the video, would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. But the Israeli lobby has lost so much power that the New York Times is able to cover the crimes of Israel now, and have felt, I guess, enough pressure that they felt it necessary to do. So all of that means that Israel is losing its power in America and on the global stage, which basically means that Israel has become more of a liability than a weapon if you're looking at domestic politics in the US. And more than that, the war has also led to a spike in oil prices, right? I don't need to price, everyone has seen it. So the oil prices going up also caused the polling of Donald Trump to plummet, right? And just quickly, I want to show you those numbers around the popularity.
Hey there,
of Israel.
I'm Harry Enton, and today we are running all the numbers on Israel's U.S. popularity problem. Israel is losing support here in the United States, even amongst Republicans. Take a look at this data. Take a look at this data amongst young Republicans. Look at this massive shift that we have had over just the last 4 years, the net favorability of Israel among Republicans under the age of 50. You go back to 2022, 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up for Israel amongst young Republicans. But by 2025, look at this. Already a 30-point shift away. Their net favorability.
So in 2022, Israel massively popular. Being pro-Israel wins you voices, wins you votes amongst the Republican base. So it's a no-brainer that Donald Trump, trying to become powerful, plays into those demands. 2025 already, you see it flip to -2 points. But this is not going to affect his hold on power very much. But then look what happens now.
Down to -2. Today, look at this, -16 points. That's an over 40-point shift in just 1, 2, 3, 4 years' time away from Israel amongst young Republicans. But that
Donald Trump is going to lose the Republican if he continues doing everything Israel asks, right? That's the bottom line. And this you cannot continue holding power in the US, supporting issues that have a -16% approval rating, -16 points approval rating in your own Republican Party, right? Let alone the Democratic Party. I think it's 80% that sympathize more with Palestine than Israel, right? So this political liability has meant that Donald Trump actually kind of shifted a little bit, right? Don't forget that the war itself, I mean, just to highlight, I think we have the numbers here. Yeah, right here. Look. Again, Support for the war, 36%. On the lower range, 31%. Oppose the war, 57%. On the higher range, 60%. Right away from the get-go, it was unpopular, but it's only getting more and more unpopular as time goes on. The Israeli propaganda is not helping. Otherwise, you would see that reflected in the numbers. At most, it's holding back the opposition to the war a little bit, but not by much, right? What else? He got very little support from Europe as well, Eurozone. So I have to shout out Europe. I think he was looking to have a full invasion coalition coming from NATO. He didn't get it in the end. He also is losing support from the Arab nations. And because of the Iran war, he didn't have any leverage when he went to China, right? He was hoping to be able to hold China hostage around oil trade. But because they didn't win in Iran as quickly as he thought and take all the oil, he didn't have any leverage with China. So not only domestically, but also on the international plane, he is losing a lot of power. And that is detrimental to the psychology of Donald Trump, because all he cares about is power and money. Therefore, he has been forced now to take a step back from Israel. And you might be thinking, okay, that's all well and said, but if it really was that simple, but it can't possibly be that simple. I know there's some conspiracy theorists out. I don't know how much of a conspiracy theory this is, but let's just say it. The elephant in the room, right? What about the Epstein files? Because we know that Donald Trump is heavily implicated in the Epstein files. We know that Jeffrey Epstein was closely tied to the Mossad, which is the FBI of Israel. So, potentially, most likely, Israel has video proof of Donald Trump engaging in pedophilia, right? But here is the unfortunate truth that I also think a lot of people misjudged. The fact is, nobody cares. Israel could release this video today and nothing would change. Donald Trump already released the Epstein files himself. It was his own government that released the Epstein files. And nobody cares. Nothing changed. His approval rating did not plummet because of the Epstein files. It plummeted because of the price of oil. So if the price of oil goes down and more Epstein files get released, his approval ratings will go up. Video footage will not make a difference. We all know what they are doing. And none of them have been arrested. And no one has done anything. And it's just part of society. I said this point a while ago, by the way, when the Epstein files came out, that this would be normalized, nothing would ever happen. And that now we're going to live with it. So yeah, this is the truth. The elites of this world, including Donald Trump, will rape your children and you will do nothing about it. That was a hard one to say, but it's the truth. It's the truth. And the fact that it appears on video, do you think that's going to change something? We have the emails, we have the flight logs, we have the creepy letters, we have the photographs. We have photographs of Donald Trump with children. Okay? Just because the photo moves, you think that's going to cause a revolution? No. It's over. It's over. They won. They won. They won. Okay? The Epstein class won. So, because our society is actually so degenerate and so backwards that we don't care about the abuse of power of the wealthy, that we don't care about the Epstein files and the pedophilia that the rich and powerful in our society are taking part in. Because of that savagery that we have in our society, Israel has actually lost their leverage on Donald Trump. Because even if they do have some video evidence of the Epstein files, nobody cares. You are not going to do anything about it. His approval rating will not move. Mainstream media will probably still not report on it because they themselves are implicated. We're just going to continue pretending like that's not the case and like we have a fair judicial system. So nothing and I mean nothing, that Israel has of blackmail could hurt the approval ratings of Donald Trump the way that high oil prices ruin his approval ratings. So of course, what does Donald Trump do? A man who loves money and power. He says, okay, well then Israel, you no longer are useful to me. You no longer are powerful, so I don't respect you anymore. And you're actually causing me to lose power. So you're leeching off of my power now, which means that as a Donald Trump person would, he's going to drop Israel. And that is what caused the shift away from Israel. And that is what I forgot in my logic last time I was live on this broadcast. The fact that Donald Trump doesn't have any allegiance to any political ideology. I actually fell victim to the con. I believed him. You know, he is so convincing that I forgot. I forgot he has no allegiance to any ideology. I thought he genuinely loved Israel, right, for a moment. And I forgot that no, he has no allegiance to anyone other than his power and money. So, yeah, and I think this is just to highlight that point. We have this story coming out, which is Jared Kushner. This is the son-in-law of Donald Trump, right? And here's the headline from the New Republic. Guess what Jared Kushner tried to include in Iran peace deal? Kushner wants to turn Iran into his next real estate development project. Yep. Donald Trump and the Trump family are trying to funnel the investments and sanction relief that they would give Iran as part of this peace deal back into their own pockets. Trump wants to build Trump Tower in Tehran. He wants to steal oil for American industry. And he wants to open up access to a market so that his son-in-law can make a lot of money off of the Iranian economy. Don't forget, Iran has 90 million people, a lot of natural resources, and it would be the second biggest market to open to the American investors since the USSR. Okay? So this would be a huge area of profit for the Trump family, because they always arrive first with every single time they make a deal on behalf of the country, the Trump family is there getting rich off of that deal. So again, Donald Trump has a lot more to gain. Now, Israel's response, of course, doesn't change, right? Just because Donald Trump is thinking different doesn't mean that Israel has changed their approach at all. So the first thing they did was, of course, go on a bombing spree in Lebanon, and this is quite literally live. So if you're watching this live, covering also live updates from Al Jazeera. And I think that, the main 2 points throughout the day remain the same. Iran's foreign minister Abbas... Oh, never mind. Okay, this one is new, so I didn't read this point before, but basically Iran's foreign minister is saying that the deal is still in the process of getting finalized, not yet signed. This is the point I wanted to read out loud. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he has instructed the Israeli military to expand the maneuver in Lebanon after the occupation of strategic Beaufort Castle. So, Israel has expanded into Lebanon further and started a mass campaign of scorched earth. And we see here, okay, some interesting live updates. Germany says Israel's assault on Lebanon is cause for serious concern. Trump says he's close to a very good deal with Iran, but has no rush to come to an agreement. Okay. Israel strikes and shelling hit southern Lebanon towns. So yeah, as you can see, live here breaking like every time. Let's quickly read this recap. Sorry, here's the recap of the latest developments. At least 4 people have been killed in Israeli air raid in the town of Al-Abashesh, with dozens of people injured due to multiple attacks on the port city of Tyre, including near a hospital in southern Lebanon. A Hezbollah drone injured at least 4 people in Beit Hillel in northern Israel. And Lebanon's health ministry said the death toll of Israeli military campaign has risen to 3,412 people, with 10,269 others wounded since March 2nd. So basically what you need to know is that Israel, of course, Israel also starts killing Palestinians in occupied West Bank. What you need to know is that Israel is throwing an anger fit and attacking everyone in the vicinity in order to destabilize the region and try to throw off this peace deal, because they do not want to accept the peace deal. In a similar fashion, month killed 2 commanders of Hamas in Gaza. Now, I don't care what you think of Hamas. The truth is, Israel signed a ceasefire with Hamas. So even if you don't like Hamas, it doesn't matter, because Israel is in a ceasefire with who? Hamas. So that means they are not supposed to be killing anyone who is part of Hamas or in Gaza in general. But they continue their airstrikes throughout the ceasefire, right? Just like they did in Lebanon, they're also doing it in Gaza. And they killed a chief of the Hamas armed wing. And this is the second one this month. So, I think Mohamed Odeh is his name. And he's the second one. Yeah, they killed his predecessor earlier this month. So, despite ongoing ceasefire. Great report, France 24. So you see there, right? They're killing all the people they negotiate peace with in Gaza. They're continuing the assault on Lebanon and escalating it as much as possible today, in this very given moment. And also reporting came out that they're trying to convince the Americans to kill all of the Iranian peace negotiators. Classic move by Israel, right? To negotiate peace, and while negotiating peace, threaten to kill the people that you're negotiating with. So their endless lust for expansion and to attack Iran remains the same. And they still want a full ground invasion with NATO troops in Iran. Now, Israel is not going to partake in that invasion, funny enough, right? They refuse to set foot in Iran themselves because they recognize that it's too costly and it would be very dangerous for them to do that. But they have been trying to convince NATO from day one to join this, to do an assault on Iran on their behalf, essentially. And they're not going to stop with this. So what happens next is that Israel is going to continue in their fashion of endless provocations, false flags, right? They are going to continue their tactic of trying to get the world to go to war on their behalf. This happened in 1967 when they signed a peace deal. This happened after the Oslo Accords in 1991, when Yasser Arafat and the Americans, Bill Clinton and Yitzhak Rabin, signed a peace deal. And every single time that the international steps in and says, enough, we're going to sign a peace deal, the Israelis sabotage that peace deal and put constant pressure on that peace deal by doing endless provocations and false flag attacks. Okay? So, all of this to say that although Donald Trump has taken a step away from Israel, what happens next is a lot more tricky. Distancing himself from Israel during a peace talk is quite easy. Reining in Israel during endless provocations is near impossible, right? So if Trump can somehow hit back at Israel and control the Israeli government, then the peace talks will hold and there will be peace between the US and Iran. And Donald Trump will just attack South America instead. But at least the Middle East will quiet down, right? And the Strait of Hormuz will open and we can all trade and have regular prices of oil again. But if Donald Trump, like every single one of his predecessors, fails to rein in Israel, then the war will resume just how it started. If Israel continues these provocations, eventually the provocation of Israel will be so large that the Iranians will have to respond, and a new wave of war is going to restart the exact same way that it started to begin with, right? The US is going to preemptively rejoin the war in order to appear strong and in control. So in order to avoid a situation where it looks like the Americans are getting dragged into the war on behalf of Israel, they will preemptively restart the war in order to make it seem like it was their own decision. So Israel is going to continue provoking Iran and stepping out of bounds of any peace agreement made between the US and Iran. And for Donald Trump to stop that and to be able to maintain the peace while there's just one person, one group of or one country in the mix constantly trying to start a war is very difficult. So to summarize, I was wrong about Donald Trump's intentions. He doesn't have a spiritual loyalty to Israel. I forgot that. He actually has a spiritual allegiance to money and power. Israel is losing so much in the field of money and power that they have lost respect from the Americans, from Donald Trump. And now we have an opportunity, an opening for peace, because Donald Trump thinks that he is more powerful than Benjamin Netanyahu. He thinks now that the Israeli lobby is leeching from him rather than the other way around, which is what he prefers. So the war might resume because it's a tricky situation to be in, trying to go against Israel. But for now, there might be peace. And yeah, that's it. If you're watching this live, stick around. We have a lot more topics to get to. I know I've been streaming already for, I think, over an hour, but we're going to talk about a lot more still. If you're watching this recorded, check out the live streams or the other clips from the live stream right now, because we covered a lot of interesting topics. We're going to go into South America next. So looking at what Donald Trump might do instead of attacking Iran. And yeah, we are a fully independent media. We don't get funding from anybody, including the viewers. So I do this purely for the love of the game, because I like talking about politics without beholden to any corporate lobby or political group. And because somebody in Europe has to say these things out loud, because otherwise we are going to go down with the sinking American ship. So that is why I do this. And if you enjoy that and you like having a voice for the European people out there, then make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. Amazing. If you're watching this live, stick around. I see a few people who are still watching, so you should put a comment in the chat. Say hello. Let me know what's going on, and if you have any questions, because I answer all of them. Since there's only a few of us here, we might as well have a conversation. Next, we're going to talk about Trump's plan for world domination. And yes, you heard that correctly. Okay, let me chew. It's a very short attention span. You can wait 5 minutes. Oh, not 5 minutes, 5 seconds. This is Iran, by the way. I'm not a grown-ass man drinking milk. This is Iran. Very different. If you have a Turkish store in your vicinity, go get yourself some Iran. Very good for you. Okay. Next topic. Donald Trump has a master plan to take over the world. And it might actually work. Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna be talking about South America, obviously, because that's where the plan is. And yeah, let me. Okay, guys. Once I start recording the segment, I'm not gonna tell you again. So if you're watching this live, now is the time to step in, and drop a question. Anyways, if you're ready, here we go. Donald Trump pulls out of Iran. Trump gets embarrassed in China. Axios says Cuba's preparing a drone attacks against the US. The United States bombs Guatemala. Bolivia is on the brink of civil war. Trump has secret negotiations with Denmark about Greenland. And all of that I just mentioned happened in the last 15 days. If you're looking at each one of these stories individually, you might be confused. Worry not, you've come to the right place. I'm going to break it down for you and go through the larger plan that is at play. Spoiler, it is an attempt for the US to regain control of the world and win the war with China. You might not know it, but we are at war with China. So all of this has a greater purpose that was outlined a long time ago, and we're gonna go through it so that you know what to expect in this world, and to make sense of all these insane headlines. Because if you're reading each one of them individually, you might sometimes feel a bit lost and not know where to place your empathy or what action to take. Well, the truth is, it all comes back to the US losing to China. And we're going to explain all of that in this video. So let's get into it. USA has lost to China. This is no longer a disputed territory. This is just a fact. Trump last month went to China begging for access to their markets and not the other way around, right? So it is clear just from that alone that the Americans are a lot more desperate to enter the Chinese market rather than the Chinese being desperate to enter the American market. So after all of the tariff wars, it is the Americans who back down. It is Donald Trump who has to go begging with 20 billionaires for contracts in China, and not the other way around. Trump wanted to starve China of oil. So he wanted to use oil as a leverage to force them back into being a cheap labor state. But that didn't work because they lost in Iran. The first step worked, which was to take over Venezuela and take over all the oil in Venezuela. But the second point did not work because they lost in Iran. They weren't able to take all the oil in the way they wanted to. So this means that the United States is in a very weak position against China, right? Moreover, Chinese tech is far more popular than American tech. It started with just simple plastics that China outproduced compared to America. Then it became simple electronics. Then around the 2016-17 era, it turned into smartphones. I don't know if you guys remember when Huawei was first putting their posters up in all European cities with their new phones. But I do, because I was 15 or 16 at the time. And it was a big deal because until then, all we had was Samsung or Apple, both of which are American companies, essentially. I know Samsung is Korean, but that's just an American proxy. So the Chinese started outcompeting the Americans at smartphones. And that was the real first big sign that the tech war was going to end up winning or being won by the Chinese. Now, with BYD electric vehicles that they have in China, it's cars that the Chinese are winning at. Not only cars, but also solar panels, right? So the tech there, China, is far more affordable and higher quality than anything Elon Musk is producing, right? I think the cheapest BYD vehicles go for like 10, 20,000 euros, which is nothing compared to a Tesla, right? I think that's like 100,000. So there's a huge difference there. And if there was no tariffs, obviously the Chinese would have dominated the markets in the US and in Europe. But the Europeans and the Americans have put a lot of tariffs on the Chinese cars in order to stop that from happening. But the rest of the world still accepts Chinese cars, and they are loving it. The Chinese are completely beating the Americans now in cars. And if you're not seeing the pattern here yet, by the way, we're describing China slowly making their way up the production ladder, right? You start with mass producing things that are easy to produce, and then you get more and more technologically advanced. So right now we have reached the point of cars, electric vehicles, and solar panels. But what happens next, in a few years from now, is going to be airplanes and AI. I think it's evident that China is going to be winning those markets as well. And once they win those markets, the Americans will have nothing left. They only have Boeing and AI and data centers. That's it. That's it. What else does America produce that you can't find anywhere else? That's it. And oil, of course. But China is going to win in those markets as well, and the US will be left with nothing, essentially. So there was a need for the Americans to come up with a plan, right? And the plan has been there for a long time, but now they're starting to act on it. And we'll get to that in a second. Just quickly before we do that, 2 more reasons why the U.S. Desperately need to do something now. First, of course, they didn't win in Iran, right? So all of the American bases in the region were vacated, and after they were vacated, they were hit hard by Iranian missiles. The allies of the region did not rally around them the way they thought they would, right? Nobody came to invade Iran. Donald Trump asked everyone. He asked Korea, and nobody came to invade Iran. And they did not manage to steal all the oil from Iran like they did Iraq or Venezuela. So it was demonstrably a failure for the American military, for the American economy. And all of this puts further pressure on the fact that the Americans need to act in a different way in order to win this war against China, because the war against Iran ultimately is to destabilize China. They want to stop the flow of oil from Venezuela first, but then also from Iran to China. And the fact that they did not achieve this makes them quite desperate. The last reason why they have to act with urgency is because the United States dollar is collapsing. And this is where I start introducing sources. So let me put this on screen here. This is the interest payments on the US debt. Okay, so don't get me wrong. This is not even what you're seeing on this graph is not the total debt. This is just the interest payments. So they're not paying 616 billion of their debt. That's just the interest. So that's just money that disappears. It doesn't, you don't lower your debt by paying interest. Interest is just free money that whoever gave you money gets for the fact that they gave you money, right? You pay that on top of the down payments, on top of the repayments. So in 2016, that's already 616 billion. And you can see that every year before that, how much they paid. It's so big that the interest payments is the second biggest expenditure in the American state budget. Social Security is number 1, and it's not even that much higher. It's only 818 billion. So in 2-3 years, the interest payments from the American government are going to be the primary expenditure of the state budget. You cannot function as a state like this. Here's the 10-year forecast. Right, we're going to hit trillions very soon. Very, very soon. So the situation in the US is very unsustainable. And who gets a lot of those interest payments, by the way? China. China is the ones who historically have bought the most amount of bonds from the American Treasury. So it is China who is getting a free paycheck north of 300 billion every year from the Americans, purely on interest, right? We're not talking about repaying debt, just the interest. Okay, so all of that happening in the East, right? They're losing on the economic front. Their state model and budget is running out of time. Once it becomes main expenditure, I think confidence in the US dollar will collapse. The US Treasury market will also collapse. And they were not able to win the military battle in Iran. So what can they do instead? Well, it took them 20 minutes to win in Venezuela. Not a single American soldier died in Venezuela. Not a single American helicopter was downed. So clearly, the victory that they had in Venezuela was a lot easier than anything they can do economically against China and anything they can do militarily against Iran. So Donald Trump is switching back to what we call the Monroe Doctrine. And he calls the Donroe Doctrine because he has to rename everything under his name. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me show you. Because Donald Trump thankfully admits it out in the open. So this is Donald Trump talking about how he wants to go back to the Monroe Doctrine.
Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again.
President Trump.
There you go. By the way, that's Narco Rubio there. Narco Rubio on his left. And he's a very central figure of this plan that we're about to go through. And yeah, he's saying there very openly, I don't need to repeat it, but in case you missed it, he wants to recommit the United States to the Monroe Doctrine. He wants to call it the Monroe Doctrine because Donald Trump is the one to revive it. What is the Monroe Doctrine? The Monroe Doctrine is the belief that the US has the right to dominate all of North and South America and to extract all of their resources through colonial domination. Okay? What does that result in? Well, if you look at history, here are a few key dates as an example. In Argentina, we had the military junta in 1976 to 1983, right? So the militaries that controlled the country. Also, during that time, you had Plan Condor in South America, where the Americans were, in Argentina specifically, where the Americans were basically taking over the country in the fascist way. In Chile, you had the Pinochet regime, 1970 1990. In Uruguay, you had military dictatorship in 1973 to 1985. Paraguay, you had the Alfredo Stroessner regime from 1954 to 1989. In Bolivia, you had the Hugo Banzer dictatorship from 1971 to 1978. And in Brazil, you also had military dictatorship from 1964 to 1985. Each one of these military dictatorships, fascist military dictatorships, established, supported, and ruled by the United States. That was under the Monroe Doctrine. All of that under the idea that the United States owns these countries simply because they are in the Western Hemisphere and the United States is superior to them, right? It's colonialism. And Donald Trump wants to go back to those times. So what does that mean? That means overthrowing all of the democratically elected governments in South America, in North America, and installing puppet regimes which he can use to extract resources from those countries. I had a clip here, but I think I'm gonna skip it. So, what resources would he take? Well, oil from Venezuela, gold and other metals from Venezuela, Bolivia, and Colombia, lithium from Bolivia, rare earth minerals from Greenland, and of course, slave labor from the prison population in his own country, slave labor from the ICE detention centers, immigration detention centers in the US, and very cheap labor from all of the starving populations that result as a consequence of capitalism within the United States, but also within all of the other countries that he would be taking over. All of this coordinated and processed by the SS military or SS militia force that he would have through ICE and other militia forces in the country that he's constantly trying to activate, right? So what does this eventually mean? Well, essentially, let's have a look at the map, right? Because I think this is going to be the easiest way for me to visualize this for you guys. This is the world, right? Now, let's make Russia and China the red color, okay? And this is the, sorry. This is the United States. I almost clicked Canada by accident. So as you can see, China, Russia, and if you want, you can include Iran down there. Much bigger than the United States, right? Sorry, this is a bit silly, but I think it's going to be the easiest way for me to explain what's... So, as you can see, this war is eventually going to be lost by the Americans because these two countries together in red have a lot more people and a lot more resources than the Americans. But what if I told you that in this last month, the United States has been making secret negotiations with the Danish in order to get control of Greenland? And I can tell you with certainty that the Danish are going to roll over backwards for Donald Trump. the Europeans are going to do nothing to stop the American invasion of Greenland. They're simply going to give it to him in negotiations. So boom, Greenland, huge, massive land, turns blue, right? Canada, realistically, will never stop an American invasion. I think that one will likely turn blue at some point, but maybe that's a bit of a far stretch, so we can skip that. If we go down here, El Salvador already has a right-wing sycophant of Donald Trump. Bukele is his name. That's already blue. Of course, Puerto Rico is already blue. Cuba, they're going to invade in like the next 2 weeks. On the way back from Iran, they're going to take Cuba. They've been saying it non-stop. Axios is reporting that Cuba is planning to attack the United States. So that's a clear pretext, a false flag attack that they're trying to foment in order to have a justification to invade Cuba. Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, all of them have so much military presence of the Americans that they have basically already become puppet regimes of the Americans. If we go further down, Panama is kind of the same. I'm going to go ahead and mark that blue. Of course, they already toppled the regime in Venezuela, so that's another big country in blue. Guyana and French Guiana, both already pretty much puppets of the West. They have some of the most unfair resource extraction deals in the world. So these two countries, for me, are already blue. Looking down, Argentina, already ruled by Milei, who is a right-wing sycophant of Donald Trump. I don't know enough about Uruguay and Chile to mark them on the map. Next up is going to be Bolivia. There's a civil war that's about to pop off, and the Americans are going to join on the side of the right-wing government in Bolivia. So just coloring in the most likely and immediate allies of the Americans that will go along with this plan to unify all of North and South America under the US. And you can see that already now, just with the moves that they have done in the last few years, since Donald Trump took office in 2016, they actually managed to contest quite a lot with Russia and China. All of a sudden, the maps look a little more equal. And now, again, this one here, I'm not saying is a guarantee. This is where they more or less are right now. But let's say Canada fails to defend themselves, which is the most likely case, right? You already have a lot of Canadians who want to be part of America anyways. Let's say Mexico fails to defend themselves because they're smaller than the US. Let's say Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Peru, if Bolivia falls, most likely, Ecuador. Colombia, okay, maybe not Colombia. Let me undo that one. All of these other countries start to fall as well. You only really have Colombia and Brazil, by the way, in South America that would show any significant resistance to an American takeover. They're the only ones that could seriously hold back the Americans. And what you start to get is actually a continent of countries and resources that start to become much larger than Russia and China. All of a sudden, the population numbers look more even, the territory looks more even, and the access to resources starts to flip in favor of the Americans. So this here, right, at this point, you might be watching and going, okay, this guy is just a crazy guy on YouTube who is coloring in random countries and saying that the Americans are going to take it over and in some hypothetical future are going to rule the world by conquering the Western Hemisphere. But it's not just something that I made up. Let me show you the proof of that. This is what they call the Greater America Project. And this has very deep roots inside of the American government and inside of the factions who currently rule the American government. The first one of these movements is called the technocracy movement in the United States. And unfortunately, I don't have a nicer news source for this one, so we're going to have to go off of Wikipedia. But basically, the technocracy movement was a social movement active in the United States and Canada in the 1930s. So already in the 1930s, had this movement. And this movement favored a technocracy as a system of governments over representative democracy and partisan politics. Okay? So all you need to know about this movement is basically that they consider oligarchs and technocrats to be more efficient leaders than democratically elected presidents or political parties. So the movement is to overthrow the democratic system and install technocrats. And a big part of this movement, by the way, it shows up further down, was this map that they published showing the boundaries of this supposed technocratic state of America. And as you can see, already in 1930s, they had Greenland, Canada, Mexico, all of the Central American countries, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Ecuador, and so on. I think Ecuador's down here, but you get the point. The technocratic movement, which has roots all the way back in the 1930s, has been trying to achieve this long term since back then. It is no coincidence that tech oligarchs that are basically a modern form of the 1930s technocracy movement have a very similar vision. In fact, Elon Musk's family was heavily involved in this technocracy movement in the 1930s. The grandfather of Elon Musk was a leader of the movement in Canada. So this has very, very deep roots. And at the same exact time, by the way, in the 1930s, what do you have? You have the business plot. For those of you who don't know, the business plot, also called the Wall Street putsch, can I say that? And the White House putsch, was a political conspiracy in 1933 in the United States to overthrow the government of President Franklin D. Roosevelt and install Smedley Butler as a dictator. Butler, a retired Marine Corps Major General, testified under oath that wealthy businessmen were plotting to create a fascist veterans organization, with him as his leader, and use it in the coup d'etat to overthrow Roosevelt. So this guy here, who was supposedly going to be president, testified under oath that this plan was about to go live before he decided to betray the movement. And this was, again, at the same time you had the technocracy movement. So you have two huge movements from the 1930s. One of them, the pro-fascist Nazi movement, right, who were trying to establish a fascist America. And the other one, a tech oligarch movement that wanted business industry leaders to be heads of state, and both of whom together agreed that the borders of the United States should expand and become much larger. Okay? And we just discussed how Elon Musk had ties to the technocracy movement. Well, the Trump family has ties to the Nazi movement in the 1930s in the United States. So at the same time that Elon Musk's grandfather was leading the technocracy movement in Canada, the Trump family were funding the German-American Bund, which was a pro-Nazi organization, and of course they were also funding and associated with the KKK. So what do you have here? In summary, you have the technocrats, tech oligarchs, Nazis, and the KKK coming together in a plan to expand the borders of the United States. And this was a very popular idea in the 1930s. Now, when World War II finally ended, these ideas in America were shelved and put away. Not because there was any moral opposition to it, but because the centrist liberals, the liberal Democrats, and the institutionalist Republicans had a separate vision for how to dominate the world. They didn't think that they needed direct domination by conquering these lands, but could instead, through the United Nations, through soft power, through military intervention, and through regime change, manipulate and hold on to the rest of the world without having to directly conquer and occupy these lands. So it's not that these ideologies went away. It's just that the approach was different. The neoliberals wanted imperialism, but wanted to do it in a very different way, particularly in a way that was masqueraded as democracy and freedom, right? In a way that it feels more pleasant. But all of these ideologies are right now in America coming back, and this is why Donald Trump was put in office, because the people who have real power in the U.S. see that the freedom and democracy neoliberal order is causing them, the Americans, to lose against China. And in order to stop that, they are going back into their roots of technocracy, oligarchy, and straight Nazi fascism. Right? And really, like, maybe, yeah, and really, if you think about it, it really Hitlerian sort of thought pattern. Right? It's nothing strange. When an empire is in decline, they tend to do this. You know, they can't attack Iran, so they go for an easier target closer to home. This is exactly what Mussolini did. You know, he had all these dreams about a great Roman Empire. He understood that Italy kept losing wars and getting smaller and smaller. So what did he do? He invaded Ethiopia as an easy target. Hitler, the same. The Prussian German Empire had fallen after World War I, and he had dreams of a larger German Empire again. So what does he do? He invades Poland. And you have many, many more of these examples in history of empires in decline that go back to the roots of expansionism and try to invade easy targets. And of course, the Americans might actually be able to snowball their way through these targets, but it really depends on a lot of things. You know, Hitler, for example, was able to conquer quite a few countries before he eventually met a wall against the USSR and against the British and eventually against the Americans, right? But the issue for Donald Trump and this plan is that snowballing way through smaller countries only works when an empire is rising. When it is declining, it doesn't tend to work. And here is why. When an empire is on the rise, usually that empire has a competitive advantage, meaning that every new conquest adds to their power, right? Usually they're efficient, energetic, and well organized. So when they conquer a territory, they're able to extract a lot of gains very easily and incorporate that into their empire. But when an empire is in decline, like the United States, usually the empire no longer has any strong will to fight. Usually they have lost their competitive advantage, evident by the fact that they are in decline. So every new conquest actually slows down the empire, because every new conquest comes with an occupation that costs more than it provides in gains back to the empire. Because of the empire's inefficiency, because it has lost its energy, its will to fight, national identity, conquering and occupying countries becomes a very painful and slow endeavor. So, what do these empires in decline always rely on? Well, they rely on that they're a big empire going after smaller targets. And what does that boil down to? Essentially, they think it doesn't matter that we are inefficient, that we are corrupt, and that we have no will to fight, because we have overwhelming firepower. So what can Cuba do against us? You know, Cuba can have a huge will to fight compared to the Americans, but if the Americans have infinite bombs to drop from the sky, what does it really matter? You know, eventually the Americans are going to win. And this is why they were able to take Venezuela so easily, right? So what happens next is that South America has to endure expansion of the Americans, and whether or not the Americans win relies entirely on whether South America will have the will to fight. For example, in Iran, you saw that the Americans that the Iranians had the will to fight, and that is why the Americans lost. But in Venezuela, for example, there was no will to fight, and so the Americans won very easily. Now, South America has lost a lot of its will to fight in the last decades, but historically, there used to be a large socialist, pro-sovereignty, anti-American imperialist movement in South America. So if that historical will to fight against the Americans somehow gets revived, then the US empire will collapse in this endeavor. But if it doesn't, and instead the South Americans don't find their will to fight, then eventually the US will conquer all of the Western world, will snowball their way through South America, and will go to war against China with full footing. And that is the end of this video. If you're watching this live, stick around. I think I have one or two more smaller topics to go through. We're going to jump into Bolivia, actually, right after this. So, yeah, we can talk about one of these conflicts in detail. And if you're watching this recorded on YouTube, then go ahead and click on the next video, which is going to be about Bolivia. It's all from the same live stream. I just cut it up and upload it. If you want to watch it live, just join us, usually live in the late night during the weekends. All of this is done purely for the love of the game. I don't take money from anyone to do this, not even you viewers. So if you like a fully independent media show that talks the way I talk, then feel free to subscribe, like, share the video. Amazing. Yeah, let's continue going. I don't think I'm gonna take a break. We're gonna go straight into Bolivia here, and for this one, I'm gonna do it a little more laid back because I'm a bit tired.
Up next, we're gonna be joined.
We're just gonna watch a video here from Ryan Grimm from Dropsite News. Used to work at the Hill Rising, which then became Breaking Points. And yeah, let's get through the video, and we'll see if I can produce some good commentary about it. Wait, I wonder if I... Yes, I did have an intro. Amazing. I need to quickly adjust my gain here because I think my noise gate is a little too high. There we go. Can you still hear me? Mic check. 1 2 1 2. Perfect. Maybe I skipped this one. How long have I been going? 2 hours. Huh? I think I need a little more energy in the tank to be able to do that one. You know what? I'm going to do one more topic here and then call it a night. We're gonna have to talk about Bolivia another time. Although I did make a video already on Instagram, so you can watch that there. Okay, let me take a bite of food, and then we will get into the Sumud Flotilla because yeah, I have to cover it. It was some weeks ago already, but I've had a lot of interviews with them, and I think there's an interesting angle here. So we're gonna get that in a second. You guys ready? Okay. A few weeks ago, you will have all seen videos on your social media feeds of Israel kidnapping over 400 activists sailing to Gaza in international waters and abusing them on camera, which they themselves filmed and published in order to flex essentially to the whole world how savage they are towards their political prisoners. Now, this, I think, might actually be a turning point for the Israeli lobby, because, you know, all the videos we get out of Gaza have had an impact on a lot of people in Europe because of just the human toll that it takes on you watching kids get blown up. But seeing white Europeans in the shoes of Palestinians completely changes the equation. And the fact that the Israelis were broadcasting this and publishing this gleefully just shows the rest of the world in such an obvious, undeniable way the sadism, the enjoyment that the Israeli state has in the violence that they commit. And the first proof of that concept is, of course, the way that the BBC has covered these videos. So we're going to have a look at that to start with. And I'll give you some commentary.
The Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper says she sent a summons to the Israeli embassy to demand an urgent explanation of a video released by Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, in which he taunts activists who'd been detained from a Gaza aid flow.
Now, very interesting. First of all, BBC, Zionist outlet, right? We all know that. We don't trust them. But even the BBC has to cover this. And now the BBC is doing their best to ignore the gruesome details of the stories and are for some reason hyper-focusing on the fact that the videos that we're about to watch were made to humiliate the activists from the Sumud Flotilla. The humiliation of the videos is not the headline. The headline is the torture, the sexual assault, the shots, the shot wounds, like from guns, you know, that the Sumud Flotilla crew had to endure from the Israelis. The headline is not just that it felt, you know, a bit degrading to be told on camera that you are a terrorist. Name calling is not the main offense of the Israeli forces, but that is what BBC is focusing on. Yet, it will have a much bigger impact than usual because of what you're about to watch.
Flotilla. There's been widespread condemnation of the footage. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the video wasn't in line with the country's values. From Jerusalem, Emir.
And take note, the backlash is so intense that even the BBC has to call out Israel, and even Benjamin Netanyahu had to come out and apologize and say that the behavior is not in line with Israeli values.
NATO reports.
Free Palestine!
Pulled to the ground, one activist tries to interrupt Ben-Gvir's triumphant parade.
You know, this is a high-ranking Israeli official of the government, okay? And he's proudly, gleefully showing how he abuses detainees. The fact that this is on camera and that they're boasting about it is what makes it undeniable. So now we have video footage to go alongside the horrific stories that the Sumud Flotilla crew recount.
This is Israel's far-right security minister taunting international activists, playing to the cameras. Here,
Look at this. Look at this. How many photos have you seen of Palestinian prisoners in this exact same position, being treated like animals, like cattle, in this painful position with their hands tied behind their back, face to the floor, while prison guards go around beating them? This image here is very common, but usually the skin color of the people in this position is brown or darker, right? It's not white Europeans. And that means something. It means a lot. Because calling an Arabic person a terrorist and then immediately dehumanizing and assuming that they deserve this inhumane treatment is very easy in the Western world because we have decades of racism, centuries of racism built up, and decades of propaganda telling us that Arabic people are terrorists and deserve to be treated as such. But these people are white people, and it is much harder to say to European and American audience that the people on your screen that you're watching here are terrorists and deserve this treatment. No, what they see here are the baristas at their coffee shop, are the friends of their sons and daughters. Look more like just a random group of kids taken off a college campus than anything else, right? This looks like your neighbor. And so it becomes very hard to dehumanize them. And once the European eye has seen what they consider to be real humans enduring the brutality of the Israeli regime, and has seen that the Israeli regime takes joy in that brutality, the next time that they see that image with Palestinians instead of Europeans, then they will be forced to find empathy within themselves for the Palestinian prisoners, because they have now done the mental work required to do that. Because they have had empathy for the Europeans who were in that position, they will now be able to have empathy for the Palestinians when they are in the same position.
Found and forced into prostrate position are some of the 428 detained volunteers from 45 countries.
Again, how many images have we seen of Palestinians like this?
They'd been attempting to reach Gaza with humanitarian aid.
I've seen so many videos of prisoners in Israel, hostages, right? Palestinian hostages being dragged out from one cell to the other like this, with their heads down as if they're animals.
But were taken to Israel instead. Welcome to Israel. We are the masters here, he says. Concerns have been raised for the global Sumud Flotilla volunteers after Israeli commandos began boarding the fleet of 52 boats on Monday near Cyprus.
Why? Hey! Why are you shooting?
Here, the sound of what activists said were rubber bullets. Israel denied using live fire. The final boats were intercepted this morning in what the organisers said was the illegal abduction of those seeking to confront Israel's ongoing crimes against the.
What a fucking joke, the BBC, by the way. Just saying, the footage you are watching, the Sumud Flotilla activists claim, invented, think, happen to suspect, is an illegal interception on international waters. No, BBC, you have access to Google Maps. You know where this happened. All of the Sumud Flotilla boats have a live tracker that you can track on YouTube. It is not the opinion of the Sumud Flotilla crew that they were kidnapped in international waters. It is fact. So why are you saying that according to the Sumud Flotilla activists, this is what happened? No, you are supposed to be journalists. You're supposed to report the truth. So please say the truth.
Palestinian people. The Israeli government called the flotilla Hamas supporters and defended their detention.
And this is the fucking bullshit that I'm talking about, because then they go ahead and say, so does, the Sumud Flotilla crew members say that they were assaulted unfairly in international waters, but the Israeli forces say that they were just attacking Hamas and defended their illegal interception. I mean, okay, so you're just going to present both sides as if they're equal? No. One side committed a war crime. Sorry, not a war crime, just a normal crime under international law, broke all forms of maritime law, and the other side were the victim of that crime. So as a serious reporter, you cannot present the two as equal. But that's just my quarrels I have with the BBC, which is why we do what we do here on the Eurozone.
But Ben-Gvir's video has brought condemnation from government colleagues and from abroad.
I mean, we see these totally disgraceful scenes in this video shared by Israeli cabinet minister Ben-Gvir, which shows a total disrespect and violation of basic standards of...
And this is the sorry, it's so funny. This is the response from the British government. You can, first note, you can just tell by her eyes and by her body language and her tone that she is acting, right? She doesn't give a flying fuck about anybody on the Sumud Flotilla crew. She is acting as if she's in deep shock, right? This is British politics for you. It's all just a show where you have to pretend that what you're talking about is super, super important, you know, like it's a violation, it's humiliating. And again, listen to what she says.
Disrespect and...
Disrespect. Yeah, it's not disrespectful what they did. It's a crime against humanity. It's called torture. It's not disrespectful. It's torture. It's not disrespectful. It's rape. Like, am I crazy? Am I crazy? 12 people on the Sumud Flotilla crew, and I talked to them, by the way, on this channel. We did plenty of interviews. We did like 4 or 5. We did one earlier in the same live stream. 12 people were sexually assaulted. 14 had broken ribs. And 2 people were shot. One of them I just interviewed an hour ago. Shot with an open wound on the leg, which was very close to the key artery that runs down your leg. Okay, these are life-threatening injuries. And you're telling me that the biggest issue is that they were being disrespected. You're a joke, man. You're a joke.
Violation of basic standards of human dignity.
It's not human dignity that's the issue here. It is crimes against humanity. Okay, I'm going to stop saying it. I think you get the point.
The way that people were being treated.
While the US's ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said that the flotilla was a stupid stunt, but Ben-Gvir betrayed the dignity of his nation. Today, damage control, as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu moved quickly to denounce his security minister, saying it didn't reflect Israel's values.
Itamar Ben-Gvir is a renowned provocateur, and his critics say he delights in displays of cruelty. And this is Israel entering election season. But the rebuke from his cabinet colleagues is a message.
Again, the framing here from BBC. So they're so close. They're so close. They're like, yeah, it is evident that Ben-Gvir delights. What was the exact words he used? Sorry.
As Israel's didn't reflect.
And his critics say he delights in displays of cruelty.
He delights in displays of cruelty. Yeah, but the displays of cruelty that he's delighting in are being done by the Israeli forces, by the government. It's not like he himself went out there, took a flotilla activist, brought him home, and then did a selfie video delighting in the brutality that he himself was inflicting on these people. He is delighting as a high-ranking member of the Israeli government. He is delighting in the brutality and the violence of the same Israeli government. How can you acknowledge the delight of the violence from one minister while ignoring the violence altogether? Just absolute mental gymnastics by the BBC, but you know, what else can we expect? I got a little bit derailed there, but I can't stand to watch the BBC without, you know, saying something. Again, that's why we do what we do on Eurozone. But the point is that even though the BBC is still running cover for Israel, the videos are undeniable. What you see there with your own eyes is not disrespect. It is people being treated as animals. And it is an entire country that enjoys that pain, the suffering of other people. Okay? Nothing new, by the way. None of this is new. Again, I'm going to do, like, I've been reporting on this since forever. So we're going to do a little speed run of some of the clips that I have from this own channel interviewing survivors of the Sumud Flotilla. Just to show you that, you know, none of these details are new. It's just the fact that it was caught on camera, and then we're going to get back to the main point. So let's look at one here.
Of it all was hearing the screams of Palestinians while we were in the prison. It sounded like people were being tortured. It was absolutely agonizing to hear. There were multiple assaults throughout the few days that I was in prison, from one of them punching me in the back in the middle of the night, one of the soldiers throwing me against a wall, all sorts of human rights abuses. But the most, I don't know what the word is for this, but The most disturbing part of it all was hearing the screams of Palestinians while we were in the prison. It sounded like people were being tortured.
Yeah, so that was Stan Safi, again, April of 2025, so over a year ago, describing to you the horrors there of being inside of Israeli captivity after being kidnapped, again, in international waters. Yeah, then we have this one that was from the most recent round of activists who came back from the Sumud Flotilla at Schiphol airport. I was waiting for them there. Thank you to the Sumud organization for giving me that tip. But yeah, again, plenty of interviews from months ago with Dutch citizens and what they went through. Again, sexual assault will be one of these videos, and you're going to hear it. So here you go.
We had to be in distress positions for hours, strip search. Some people had to face sexual abuse. They attacked us and they threw flash bombs, weapons aimed at us 24/7, slept to provide us all day and all night. That's nothing compared to what the Palestinians has to deal with. Free Santiago! Free Santiago! They took my pants and grabbed me by the genitals and told me, let's see how resilient you are. And I'm here right now and I'm telling them that I am resilient enough to keep saying free Palestine. I was one of the lucky people. I know it's weird to say that I'm one of the lucky people. There's a lot of people who got more injured than me. 7 people who had head injuries. 2 of them were severe head injuries. They took my pants and grabbed me by the genitals and told me, let's see how resilient you are. And I'm here right now and I'm telling them that I am resilient enough to keep saying free Palestine. I was Greece and Italy, their foreign ministers.
The Greek and Italian.
Go. Sorry, there was some other selfie.
I know that you're probably tired of recounting the horrors that you experienced. I do see you have a bruise under your left eye. Was that sustained under Israeli captivity, and how bad was it? How bad were the conditions, essentially? It was very bad conditions. I was one of the lucky people. I know it's weird to say that I'm one of the lucky people, but there's a lot of people who got more injured than me. There's people there. We were 7 people who had head injuries. 2 of them.
By the way, absolute heroes. Like, just the fact that I wonder if I tagged him here. Anas is his name. Ahmad was the one who gave me the tip to come to the airport. Anas is the one talking here. They were deprived of water and food for 3 days leading up to this moment. Have just arrived in the country, coming out of Schiphol, and immediately bombarded by people like myself trying to get an interview, trying to get a comment. And immediately they go back to speaking up for the Palestinians, talking about the brutality of the Israeli regime, focusing on the struggle of other people, taking away the pain that they themselves went through, right? This guy here, Anas, explains how he was sexually assaulted by the Israelis, right? His genitals getting grabbed was in the previous clip. I mean, how painful would that be? Someone grabbing your genitals as a way of torture, trying to tell you, how resilient are you now? And still, what he decides to talk about in this clip is how the treatment of other people was way worse than himself. Just complete selfless people. And my respect for them is immense.
Were severe head injuries, and the Greece government denied them going immediately to the hospital. They had to wait for 4 or 5 hours until they can be transferred to the hospital. The most lovely thing that they do, like it was their hobby, is to aim their guns on us 24/7. They denied us our clothes. They kept us in cold conditions. They used violence in every chance they got. And they used water cannon to keep us wet in the cold. During the day, we were not allowed to to have any water. It was very harsh, but it was not harsh enough to say that we have the Palestinian experience in prison.
Yeah. I don't know if they'll.
This is Eurozone just asking about the situation of Tiago and Saif because the Israeli.
We had 3 containers to sleep in. 180 person in 3 containers. That's more than 40 person in each container. And they expressly flooded the area with water so we cannot sleep. They even took our winter clothes from us. That's nothing compared to what the Palestinians has to deal with. I am, as a Palestinian, I had to hide my roots and my Arabian.
I think you guys get the point. I don't know if I will, if this loads. I have to go very far back, but I would like to play 1 or 2 clips from Tansafi because, again, the ones that we just saw were from a few months ago. But Tansafi's clips, they're going to be very far back. I just realized because it's more than a year ago. But they were just as extreme and had a lot of the same things being recounted, right? So the headline here is not that these things have been happening. It's just that no one in the West was covering it because it's very easy to ignore. I guess it's very easy to ignore when there's no video to accompany it. It's very easy to just assume and say that probably these activists are lying or just ignore the activists altogether. Whereas now that we have videos to accompany it, it becomes undeniable, right? Let me pull up one more video. Let me see if it's this one.
There was one day where it was particularly hot and one of the soldiers stood outside our cell. You can see there's a window and he just licked an ice cream. Sometimes they would just come in and they would scream at us in Hebrew and we didn't know what they were directing us to do and they would get angry if we didn't do what they said. Stepping on my feet because I didn't know they wanted me to put my slippers on. It was very, very hot and we were forced to wear tracksuit pants and a t-shirt and a jumper. So it was just debilitating, the heat. If we took them off at any point, we would be disciplined, yelled at, or for me, assaulted. There's a bathroom, but the shower had like scalding hot water. There was one day where it was particularly... It was the only time I actually saw any of them smile. I was being held in a cell and I could see my other comrades ahead of me who were being forced to put on the prison clothes. And this guy with the camera was just laughing and laughing. And he kind of turned his screen to show the other guys. And I realized he was taking photos of all of them while they were being strip searched. And they were just, high-fiving him. It was the only time I actually saw any.
I think that highlights enough, right? You can find all of those interviews in clips on Instagram, upscrolled, or here on YouTube in the shorts. You can also find the full interviews if you ever want to watch them on this channel, both the live and the edited versions. So yeah, you have access to all that information. Now, of course, all of this, as I said, now caught on video, it becomes undeniable. I don't want to play this again because I played it earlier in the live stream. But if you somehow don't know the extent of the horrors of what Palestinians go through, I'm going to play just the first minute of this video from the New York Times. And then I'm going to make my final point.
When Israel was attacked on October 7th, 2023, officials were quick to condemn the sexual violence of Hamas.
You've heard of the rape of Israeli women? Where the hell are you?
Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies.
He uses rape as a weapon of war.
Sexual violence as a weapon of war by Hamas.
I went to the West Bank to talk with Palestinians who experienced sexual assault firsthand by Israeli soldiers, settlers, and prison guards. Their harrowing accounts, backed by lawyers, surveys, and international reports, suggest that sexual violence by Israelis against Palestinians is widespread. And that raises the question, where is the revulsion against sexual assault now?
Okay. This is a piece by the New York Times which goes on to explain how there is systematic sexual violence from the Israeli forces against Palestinians. And again, none of that is new. You know, you can find reports of that since 2004. In fact, it's been going on since 1917. None of that is new. We've on this channel reported all of the stories from the Sumud Flotilla crew. Again, none of it at all, in any way, shape, or form, is new. It's just the fact that they caught themselves on video in 4K, happy to share with the world how savage they are, and that the victims in those videos was not one or two Europeans, but hundreds. Hundreds of Americans and European citizens with white skin. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is disastrous for Israeli PR. You cannot simply recover from that. And what I'm saying might sound a bit weird to those of you who have seen videos for so long of Israeli brutality and yet are still waiting for an ounce of change to arrive. But I urge you to remember the tactics of Martin Luther King, who did achieve massive strides in the liberation and in the human rights of black and brown people in the US. Right? Martin Luther King's philosophy was that if he showed up with other people in white spaces and presented himself as close to a white person as possible, wearing their same uniform, their same clothes, speaking their same language, presenting himself elegantly, to humanize himself according to white standards as much as possible. And in that white character, if you will, endured a lot of violence, filmed violence, public violence from American racists from the KKK, that in that moment, the violence would, in any human who witnessed it, awake a strong sense of empathy, an undeniable fact that what they are witnessing is wrong and goes against humanity. And that worked. The tactics of Martin Luther King worked. He got the sympathy and the empathy from a great majority of the American and Western people. Of course, it is unfair that he must endure that. But what people in the Sumud Flotilla are doing is very similar. They are showing up dressed as everyday Westerners. They are showing up speaking perfect English, French, German, Italian. And they are showing to the world openly, undeniably, the horrors that they have to go through, the violence of the Israeli government. And they are awakening within people a hidden empathy that will result in a lot of people finally understanding that what Israel is doing is wrong and is anti-human. Now, obviously, we're not liberals here, so I can't end it only on that positive note. I have to remind you that the theory of Martin Luther King is only half of the picture. The real complete theory is that you need Martin Luther King and Malcolm X for any real change. So while Martin Luther King invokes empathy, no one from the ruling class would capitulate to his demands if there was not a more militant Malcolm X style force making those same demands behind the barrel of a gun. Of course, I don't endorse any violence. That would be illegal. But activism, direct action, which harms moneyed interests in Europe and in the US, combined with Martin Luther King style activism, where you put yourself in harm's way, together form a very effective route. Eventually, the people with power in these countries are going to have to choose between giving in to the demands of the peaceful activists who go to protests and who go on the Sumud Flotillas, or to direct action activists who explode their weapons manufacturing sites, who chain themselves to railways, and who vandalize their properties. And this form of combined effort is very effective in driving change. And that is a message of hope, I would say, as I am seeing both of these forms of resistance increasing amongst the Western world. And hopefully that can lead to some change so that we no longer have to continue living in a world where Israel gets to do 2 genocides at once while trying to make us all join a war effort on Iran. Yeah. That's all I had to say around the Sumud Flotilla. Somber, as always, but hopeful. And if you like what I talk about, if you like the reporting you saw in this video, first of all, check out the interview I did with, I forgot her name. Apologies, it's been a long live stream. Check out the video that was part of this live stream that I did with a Sumud Flotilla activist from France who showed me injuries on her leg from when she was shot by the Israeli forces. And check out a lot of the other interviews I've done with the Flotilla crew activists. And if you like what you hear, like, subscribe, share the video, stick around and join the live streams if you ever want to see the discussion live and have a chat as well. I answer every question that people put. Yeah, we are completely non-profit, non-funded. We don't take any money from anyone. So not even you, the viewers. I don't even take donations. We do this purely for the love of the game. So if you like what you see, please share the video. And with that said, I think that concludes another topic. I just got a message that the Bolivians have woken up. So maybe I should cover the Bolivian topic. Let me get another quick one out the way, because yeah. I have to do this. I have to do this one because it's just it's too brutal. This one's gonna break my heart to do live, but I have to because it just happened. Well, I saw it this morning, and I have the news story with what happened behind the scenes ready to go as well from Ahmad on Substack, Ahmad Eldin, and it happened in the Netherlands. So obviously I have to cover it because we're coming to you live from Amsterdam. Yeah. So let's cover this one. It's gonna be quite a short topic. I think only 10 minutes maximum. So, yeah. What you're about to watch is the Dutch police throwing a pregnant woman to the ground who happens to be Palestinian and was trying to accompany her husband into the interrogation room. As you will see in the video, she poses no threat to the policeman. She is non-violent and simply asks a question and is immediately met with intense, and I mean intense, violence. So, trigger warning. And yeah, I will just show you it now. Here's the woman on the right. And This man just walks up to her, grabs her, throws her on the ground, and immediately the husband, trying to protect his pregnant wife, starts fighting, and look how they drag her by the hair. This is the Netherlands, where the police drag pregnant women by the hair. Have a look again. Just pause for a second and think about the scene that you just watched, the horror of the violence, and look at how it starts. No one here is being violent, and then this bald-headed, I need to watch my words, but you know what I would like to say. This manlet here goes up and throws this pregnant woman on the ground. And she is not 2 months pregnant, by the way, where you can mistake it. She is 9 months pregnant and gave birth 5 days later. She is 5 days away from giving birth and has a human baby in her womb that is almost fully developed. And look at how these savages treat this woman who is non-violent. Again, look at how it develops. This man just walks up and instantly throws her on the ground. Now, of course, the father, like any good man, tries to defend his pregnant wife. Look at that. Look at this man. How he is with both hands on her hair, pulling as hard as he can. Look at the size of this savage's arms and the strength that he must have. Look at this woman who has no empathy for her own gender. I mean, who has no self-awareness. How would you feel if you were pregnant and someone was doing this to you? Pulling her by her arms so that she cannot defend herself against this savage who is pulling her hair with both hands at full force, and just a woman who is in complete and utter shock and pain. Look, while the dad there, fighting for his life, is beaten down. I mean, how do these people sleep at night? I'm going to play it one more time. I mean, this is the whole video, by the way. Nothing else is going to happen after this. So I just needed to make a video specifically on this. Just to show you the savagery and the brutality of European police. This is not anything new. This is how they behave. This is how they behave. We have covered countless of stories like this on this broadcast. This is just another day of Dutch police being Dutch police. And now you might be thinking, if you're a Westerner, you're trained to immediately assume that someone is at fault and that the police were acting in the interest of the citizens, right? First of all, nothing that these people could have done would justify throwing a pregnant woman to the ground like that. Nothing. I don't care if she has a knife, a gun, whatever. You don't treat humans in that way. Because if you do, then the police is no better than the criminal. What do I care if the criminal kills a policeman if the policeman does that to a woman? Do you understand? If Batman... sorry, that's a bit ridiculous. But yeah, if Superman is a terrorist, then what do I care if the terrorist or Superman wins? Just because you wear the hero's outfit but behave like the criminal doesn't mean that you are still the hero. No, in that case, you have become the criminal. And in that case, you are on equal footing with the criminal. And in that case, I don't have any moral dilemma or interest in who wins that fight, because both of you are terrible. And in this case, by the way, the woman is no criminal. She had a simple question. And I'm reading this from the Substack of Ahmed Eldin, who is a journalist who did some proper journalistic investigation, right? This is not some Twitter post. This is a real journalist reporting on what happened behind the scenes. I'm telling you, she is no criminal. Her husband was going to interrogation in an asylum center. This was all happened in an asylum center, what you saw. The husband was going to interrogation, and the wife had a question that she asked the policeman. Can I go with my husband into the interrogation room? And then the response from the policeman was what you just saw. That's it. Unprovoked. So in this case, the woman is no criminal. She is a citizen. In fact, she is a citizen standing up by her family, right? Trying to take care of her community. And the policeman is the criminal who assaults a pregnant woman for no reason. The incident did not take place in a hospital as early social media posts suggested, but at the asylum seeker center at Kampwijk in Zeist, according to Dutch police and the NOS. Police say officers had responded to a report of vandalism and threats involving a knife in order to justify the trigger of the intervention, although that has not yet been verified. That allegation was now central context, but does not settle the question raised by the footage, whether the force was used against the woman seen in the video was lawful, unnecessary, or proportionate. The woman's own account, circulated through summaries of FaceTime videos shared online, is that she approached officers simply to ask whether she could remain with her husband during his detention. She said police refused. Moments later, she was on the ground. Days after, social media posts connected to the family showed photographs of a newborn baby girl. This is the baby that she was carrying in her stomach, in her womb. Sorry, not her stomach, in her womb. This is the baby that she had, that she gave birth to 5 days after that video. I mean, just the lack of humanity that we have in this continent is insane. And so, you know, when everyone asks me, how come Europe is so complicit in the Gaza genocide? Sorry to bring it back to Palestine, but listen, man, I have all this in the back. You thought I wasn't going to bring up Palestine. Why does Europe support genocide? Why is Europe so happy to see dead children in Gaza? Because we are a fascist continent that has no respect for human life. Because the video you just saw is a small, tiny glimpse into how we treat asylum seekers and criminals inside of our prison systems and immigration systems. Because police brutalizing random citizens for no reason whatsoever is the norm. Because police torturing political prisoners, asylum seekers, and whoever they want to inside of Dutch prisons is the norm. Because racism, evaporating your human rights, is the norm in Europe. And that's why the people here do not care that we are participating in a genocide. And that is why the people in power love it. They love it. They enjoy it. This has been Eurozone. If you're watching this live, I'm going to do one last topic. And if you're watching this on YouTube pre-recorded, then join the live stream sometimes. I give you raw news like this coming out of Europe. And if you like a voice in Europe that is independent and able to speak truth to power, then stick around, like, subscribe, and share the video. We don't take money. We're fully independent. So we do it for the love of the game. My opinions are truly my own. And you don't have to worry about me being beholden to any lobby group. All right. I'm going to jump into the last video here before we end the broadcast. It's well beyond midnight, even though this is produced by Midnight Kebab. Even I have to go to sleep at some point. So we're going to do a very chill one here. Well, not chill, but I'm going to take it a little more relaxed and just do it to get it done, basically. I haven't prepared anything like any thesis on this one. I'm just going to watch a video and react to it and give you some of my inside knowledge. All right, here we go. Let me fix the mic a little bit so I can talk a bit louder. Okay. Bolivia is on the brink of civil war, and as always, NATO has something to do with it. That's right, the civil war breaking out in Bolivia is yet another example of a global struggle between local movements fighting for well-being of fighting for the well-being of their people, and a global empire set on constant resource extraction. In other words, this is a fight between local socialism and international capitalism. And in other words, yet again, this is a fight between national sovereignty of the global south versus Western empire. That was a lot of words. Listen, I'm called Eurozone. I cover Europe primarily, but I happen to be half Bolivian, so I know quite a bit about Bolivia. What we're going to do is we're going to watch a Dropsite video which summarizes the situation in Bolivia. Dropsite is a very left-aligned anti-imperialist network, so I'm going to give credit to them on every point that they're right, but I'm also going to debunk where they reach a bit far. I don't think Dropsite is reaching far further than the truth because they are, let's say, disingenuous. I just think that Bolivia is such a small and particular country that very few outside reporters get accurate information from Bolivia and get it right. So I don't think the left is being nefarious in some of their misunderstandings about Bolivia, but I do think I have something to add to the conversation. So we're going to watch this video. It's about 15 minutes long.
Up next, we're going to be joined.
And yeah, I'll react to it and you'll get a take from an actual real Bolivian. I mean, there's people that are more Bolivian than me, right, who live there all the time and who have both parents who are Bolivian, but still, hopefully, as far as Europeans go, I am quite an inside voice when it comes to politics in Bolivia. So, here we go.
By Catherine Lederber from, I believe she's in Cochabamba. So yeah, for people who don't know, I met Catherine back in 2005 when I was down in Bolivia covering the protests that brought Evo Morales eventually to power. And so there are now protests again, very similar, that have erupted as a result of news reports indicating that.
What he's mentioning there is that Evo Morales, the socialist president, came to power in 2005 as part of a movement called MAS, which is the movement towards Socialism Party. And yeah, he came to power in 2005 with a mass protest movement that he just referenced there. And he is equating the current protest movement to the movement in 2005. First mistake, the movement in 2005 was absolutely real, but it was much more popular and broad than the current movement. The movement in 2005 was a true movement towards socialism. People were tired of capitalist oppression, of racial boundaries in the system, and therefore Evo Morales, the first indigenous president, found backing among socialists and indigenous people to overthrow the previous governments and eventually won an election which landed him in power. The protest going on now is a bit different. The protest going on now is more just general tired fatigue with the economic system being the economic situation in Bolivia being disastrous for the average person. It is not as coordinated, as cohesive, and as targeted as the 2005 protests. So there's a bit of a difference there. Ryan Grimm is trying to say that the same story is replaying all these years later. That's not quite true.
That the new government of Bolivia was going to try to arrest, with the United States collaboration, arrest Evo Morales, or go beyond arresting him because he's facing all sorts of legal difficulties. But I think it'd be easier for people to latch on here if we give a little bit of background about, We're
going to get into the background, but again, Ryan Grimm, very coincidentally, I guess, skips over the fact that the charges that the government of Bolivia is trying to bring against Evo Morales are primarily pedophilia. I'm not saying he did it. I don't know. Could be fabricated. could not be. I know for sure with the Epstein files that a lot of powerful people go down that route. And from what I have seen from Evo Morales in Bolivia, I don't doubt that right now he is a very corrupt and sick man. Would he go that far? No idea. We'll get into that nuance in a bit as we get to the background.
You know, how we got to this place. So, 2005 and 6, Morales and his movement towards socialism, MAS, takes power. You kind of have a splintering eventually of the left in Bolivia. Along the way, you saw.
Again, the timeline is accurate. He's telling the truth, but it's not the full truth. There was a splintering eventually of the left movement, right? So, again, in 2005, you have a very popular movement towards socialism under Evo Morales that's unified, cohesive, and targeted. And then eventually it splinters, but he doesn't say why. It splinters because Evo Morales betrays the socialist movement. Because Evo Morales starts colluding with the business oligarchs in Santa Cruz. Because Evo Morales forgets about Karl Marx and just wants to enrich himself. Because Evo Morales at some point was very close to implementing Marxist law and banning private property. But when he went to do that, the businessmen in Santa Cruz threatened to him that if he did that, they would start a civil war and fund militias to fight against the socialist government. And Evo Morales, instead of fulfilling the Marxist revolution and committing to that civil war, which would have been disastrous, of course, decided to go down the path of corruption, abandon the socialist movement in any material way, and simply call himself socialist while making money off of corrupt private oligarchy and colluding with the Santa Cruz business class.
Arguably, the kind of biggest lifting out of poverty of a population in.
I'm gonna pause a million times, but that's why you're here, because I have more context. Again, what Ryan Grimm is saying is correct. Before he became corrupt, leading up to that splintering, Evo Morales did bring millions of people out of poverty in Bolivia at a rate that is uncomparable, or that is comparable only to China, right? So an insane progress for the Bolivian working class, for the Bolivian indigenous class, for the peasants in Bolivia, for the farmers in Bolivia, was done thanks to Evo Morales. Without Evo Morales, most Bolivians would still be starving. Most Bolivians would still be second-class citizens to white people, right? The whole country would still be owned by Western capitalist structures. So, just so you get the timeline, 2005, everyone is super tired of the fascist American, European capitalist structures. They have this popular movement. They elect Evo Morales, the first indigenous socialist president. He lifts millions out of poverty, does a great job, but then falls short after 5 years, if you can call it that, right? Because lifting millions of people out of poverty is pretty good, right? I mean, how much more do you need to do in order to rest easy? But he refuses to let go of power, refuses to move that socialist movement forward in the way that China has, for example, instead becoming corrupt, colluding with the right wing, and in that splinters the socialist movement.
In the world, perhaps competitive with China, maybe I think even better than China did. Yet this kind of internal splintering left them vulnerable. So bring us up to the coup, the coup in 2019, the restoration of the left, and then what got us to here.
Thanks. Evo Morales was finishing his third term and running for a controversial fourth term. I think that, Mas was thinking of running a different candidate, but they...
Another thing, right? These are leftists, so they're placating a little bit here. Evo Morales didn't just run for a controversial fourth term. The constitution in Bolivia says you may only run for 2 terms. after 2 terms were done, he created a new country called the plurinational state of Bolivia so that he could run for a 3rd term. So this man just created a new country and said, you know what, the term limits don't matter anymore. So that's what he did. I might be slightly wrong on that one, but just know that there was some fuckery going on and some bending of logic in order to continue running in power. And I don't think one man needs to hold power in the socialist movement. I think the socialist movement would have been stronger if he let go of power and gave it on to the next generation who had bigger ideas, right? You did your part, Evo, like you lifted us out of poverty, you fed the whole nation, beautiful. Now let the next person come in so that we can industrialize, build cities like China and, build universities and hospitals.
Saw what had happened in Ecuador with Lenin Moreno, and there was a lot of worry that his, that the person to follow him may not, follow the policies or the vision that had been established in the first 3 terms. And we're talking about a 34% reduction in extreme poverty, the use of, to invalidate the resource curse, the use of hydrocarbons, income, and natural gas to fund social welfare programs, education, indigenous people, infrastructure. So a very long run, much to the chagrin of the Bolivian right that had been ousted for a long time. But using this 4th run, the Bolivian constitution says you can only have 2 consecutive terms. After the elections occurred, the right cried fraud, backed up by the OAS and the Trump administration. These charges of fraud were debunked by colleagues at the Senate.
So now we get to the very controversial elections. Evo won his 4th term, but certain CIA-backed right-wing American organizations claimed that it was fraud and that Evo didn't win. The leftist organizations later claimed that the fraud was fraud and that the elections were actually sound and that Evo did win. Listen, I wasn't there. I don't know. I tend to believe the leftists more, but I know a lot of people that are very smart in Bolivia who don't believe the leftists on this one. I don't know. Generally, I will take the leftist election vetting organizations over the American CIA ones, right? Like the OAS can fuck right off because I don't believe them for a second. I would have to investigate it. I'm sure I could. Maybe that's another video. Just know that the elections were very controversial. What she is saying is not 100% certain in my eyes.
For economic policy research in a very technical academic way, along with MIT-educated electoral observers. And using this fraud accusation, there were 3 weeks of right-wing blockades. The OAS admitted in audits saying that the elections were in fact fraudulent, although there were no facts to back that up. And right-wing protesters began to attack Morales, his supporters, actually threatened or the people in the constitutional line to become president, tortured members of their family, burned homes, forcing Morales to flee soon afterwards.
Yeah. In any case, Morales leaving the country was, as she's saying, this part is correct, the right wing in Bolivia got very violent. So in essence, it was a coup. Now, whether that coup was justified because the elections were fraudulent is a different question. But the fact that you cannot argue that she is saying is that Evo was kicked out with violence, right? It was a violent coup from the right wing to take power in Bolivia.
And then, they illegally positioned Janine Áñez, who was the 2nd Secretary of the Senate, as the illegitimate president. And the very next day, the military went out on the street and started killing. As you know, Ryan, there were 2...
Yeah, this is all true. Then this fucking, the only blonde person in Bolivia, somehow, apart from her, coincidentally, which is, I have to say, still a little bit of the colonial racism, right? Like, this woman's natural hair color is not blonde. No offense to her personally. I'm just calling out the racial undertones that you always see in Bolivian politics and media, where anyone who becomes president has natural brown hair, but dyes it blonde. And anyone you see on the media, such as this woman, has natural brown hair, but dyes it blonde, right? To be fair, no, yeah, I can see there that it's it's originally brown hair, right? So yeah, we had this random lady pretending to be a white blonde person, as she said, second in command in the House of Representatives, who somehow ended up being the president. Not the vice president, not anyone else, just her, Anina, I forgot her name. But yeah, she just landed herself as president, and then immediately, as she says, started repressing left-wing protesters who were angry about the right-wing coup.
Massacres, there was torture, there was the actions of parastate groups, the Unión Juvenil Crucenista that uses a Nazi salute, groups in La Paz, and parastate groups in Cochabamba as well. After this extreme violence and extreme corruption during the pandemic, elections were finally called, and Morales' successor, former Minister Luis Arce, was elected.
And this is the point I always make. I cannot guarantee you that the elections of Evo Morales that he won right before getting kicked out of the country, I cannot guarantee you 100% that those elections were legitimate. But I find it very suspicious that only 1 year after he supposedly rigged the election, his finance minister wins the next elections. If Evo was seriously so unpopular that he had to rig the elections, then why did his finance minister win? His finance minister, who had a lot of loyalty to Evo from the same party. That doesn't make sense. You would expect a different party to win in a landslide if there really was a popular grassroots movement against Evo, right? But that's not what happened. As she describes here, it was the finance minister of Evo Morales who then became the following president of Bolivia.
Unfortunately, there was a situation with Arce in power that although the Inter-American Human Rights Commission completed a detailed report on the coup, processes against human rights violators and people that were key in the coup were quite slow. And Arce began to diverge from established MAS policies, generating an extreme economic conflict, a lack of income for the state, and a great deal of corruption on his part.
This is also where she's a bit wrong. So all of the blame on the shortcomings of the MAS party, she puts on Arce. I like that she's bringing it up, but in reality, those shortcomings were already started under Evo. Both of them are corrupt. Both of them betrayed the socialist movement. Both of them turned more capitalist while maintaining lip service to Karl Marx. I saw plenty of speeches of Luis Arce where he says he got inspired to start in politics because of the scriptures of Karl Marx. That only once he read Karl Marx did he understand why he was poor and somebody else was rich, right? But all of that is nothing more than theater, because in reality, they continued selling out their country to private interests.
At that point in time, when elections came around, there was a splintering of the left. Arce's section of the MAS party, which he had wrested away from Morales under questionable means, another former Morales follower, and then Morales' party attempted 3 times to register under as an alliance with a party or under a new name, and they were systematically and illegally blocked by the Electoral Tribunal. So what we have is an election last year that didn't have all the candidates represented or all the political forces represented. The Arce followers had become discredited. In fact, Arce is in prison as we speak for corruption charges, although that's not clear how it will proceed. And what we saw was an exclusion of the great majority of grassroots voters, indigenous peoples, social movements, who ended up voting for Rodrigo Paz, the current president, because his vice president, Edmund Lara, had a populist line, and they perceived him as the least of the electoral evils. But what we saw upon the election of Paz is almost no grassroots.
Very interesting. Basically, what she's describing here is the same dynamic you have between the Republicans and the Democrats in the U.S., right? The Democrats say that they're the working man's party, right? That they're the party for the workers. But in reality, they don't do anything but collaborate with the right wing. They only advance right-wing policies. So because the people are so tired of the fake left, of the betrayal of the left, they vote for what they see as the least of the bad options on the right wing. And that is how the right wing advances their power. And very similar here. Mas became a tool of disillusionment for the youth and for previously leftist people, where they all felt disillusioned with the left. And I put that blame on Mas, right, for not advancing the socialist policies better. And then they all go and vote for the right wing, which is much worse, right? And we'll get to that in a second.
Representation in the Congress, a Congress dominated by Paz's party, and even further right Libre party of Jorge Tuto Quiroga, who had been vice president and president in 2021 and had carried out repression under U.S. pressure, and a government that isolated the vice president, that has no plan for governance. The economic crisis continues, and they eliminated, in an effort to receive foreign loans, the fuel subsidies. So from one day to the next, the week before Christmas, prices doubled and tripled for Bolivian consumers. As their administration, we're now in the 6th month, has gone on, they've been corrupt. They have not implemented key policies. The government is bankrupt, and grassroots sectors across Bolivia have marched to La Paz. These are indigenous communities from the 20 provinces of La Paz.
So obviously, as soon as then people vote for the best of the worst options in the right wing, what does the right wing deliver? Fuel prices quadruple. The economy slows down completely. All representation of local community is replaced by oligarchs. And you basically have an economic disaster, which then leads to the civil unrest that we see now. Very important. The civil unrest, again, being between, going back to the premise of this video, being between people who want to defend their community, people who want to advance social programs, and right-wing capitalist structures which have international backing.
Largely Aymara communities, the National Labor Union, teachers, miners, and a group of Evo Morales followers that are marching from the party.
And so here's footage of some of these protesters marching. There's something about Bolivia's geography that makes it kind of particularly kind of small d democratic, which maybe you could explain to viewers. You've got you've got the city of El Alto, the kind of sister city of La Paz, which is much more working class. That's just kind of just above La Paz. La Paz being in this, in the clouds for one, but there are only really a few ways in and out, and that's why I say it's small d democratic in the sense that the kind of enough people can shut down La Paz.
This is absolutely true. Any Bolivian knows this. We have very few roads that go in and out of the big cities because all the big cities are in the mountains. So 25 Bolivians shut off the whole economy by sitting down on the road. And if you've ever been to Bolivia and lived there for a long period of time, you know that any small issue, blockade instantly. People sit on the street, nothing is going to move. The whole economy comes to a standstill. I've only visited, all in all, probably, I don't know what, like 6 months out of my 25-year life. And in those 6 months, I witnessed multiple blockades just by coincidence, right? So yeah, Bolivia is very easy to blockade. And because of that socialist route that Bolivia has, you will see a lot of resistance, popular uprisings that are actually able to achieve serious consequences.
If they're willing to take on the violence of the state in a way that isn't the case in most capitals, because that have a lot of different ways in and out. So when did these marches start, and what has the kind of response of the state been so far? I saw this maybe this morning that a couple major unions have now joined. One in Santa Cruz and another one somewhere nearby that is also blocking roads kind of in and out of the city. So what is the status as we speak of this mobilization?
You're right about the geography. La Paz is in a bowl, and because of the mountain passes, it's very easy to block off the entrance. This has been a situation that's been going on now for over 2 weeks. So the city's been shut down, and the government hasn't shown an ability to negotiate with broad sectors. They blame everything on Evo Morales. They clearly, they admitted a new arrest warrant for Morales. There have been.
Here's the key. This is where the leftists have full right, where they're completely correct. Everyone in Bolivia wants to blame every single problem on Evo Morales. They want to blame this blockade on Evo Morales. They want to blame the catastrophe of the economy. And now you might be confused because before I was pushing back and saying that, he does have some of the blame. Yeah, he does. But to pretend like he is the only reason that Bolivia is an economic disaster is a complete lie. Evo Morales brought millions of people out of poverty. The fact that he betrayed the socialist movement later only means we didn't go further. But it doesn't mean that he's responsible for the underlying contradictions of capitalism and the constant forces of imperialism from the Americans. The fact that the whole Western world wants to extract resources from Bolivia, that is the underlying problem. The fact that Evo Morales stopped fighting against it actively and effectively means that we started regressing. But you cannot blame every problem in Bolivia on Evo Morales. Evo Morales was the solution to the problem, who stopped solving it at some point, who threw up his hands and said, I don't care anymore. I'll let the problem continue. Right? But you cannot blame every single problem on him. And that is where the right wing and the centrists in Bolivia go a bit crazy. They think everything in Bolivia is his fault. It's not.
And a lot of sounds from the DEA about taking Morales. That's something that we've looked at over the years, Ryan, this DEA obsession with capturing Evo Morales after they were expelled in 2008.
Yes, and here we get into the imperialism part of it. My favorite topic. The only reason why Bolivia was able to pull millions of people out of poverty, the only reason why Evo was able to do that is because he kicked out the DEA and every single other European and American profit and non-profit. Right? So he kicked out any agent of European or American governments. And because of that, they had no power left in the country to stop his socialist movement. And so he succeeded in lifting millions of people out of poverty. And because of that, the DEA, since that day, has been desperate to kill him. Desperate to kill him. They want to assassinate him so bad. And so it is the Americans that, at the end of the day, started this most recent round of riots, because it is their fault that we have insanely expensive gas prices, and it is their fault that Bolivians have this right-wing government. I mean, he's supported by the Americans, and it is their fault because they lit the fuse, which eventually blew the whole thing into fire, because they came out and demanded that the right-wing government in Bolivia either arrest Evo Morales or assassinate him. Now, to do that in this moment is insane. You can hear from my recounting of the story, which I think is relatively unbiased, that Bolivians obviously don't have a deep love for Evo Morales anymore in the way that we did in 2005, 6, 7, and 8. Right? But right now, in this moment, when a right-wing government is in power and is ruining everybody's lives, that's the moment where people slowly start to have nostalgia for Evo Morales. Right? Because at least under Evo Morales, people had enough money to drive their cars. Fuel didn't cost the same as rent, And in that moment, what Evo Morales has, is seeing a resurgence in popularity because his successors in the right-wing government are so terrible, that is when the Americans demand to assassinate him? Come on, of course that's going to cause a civil war. And that's why I say that this is a tale of imperialism versus sovereignty. Because without pressure from the Americans, a lot of these problems would not exist.
But Evo Morales isn't running all of this. So you have different sectors with different demands, although the key joint demand is a resignation of Rodrigo Paz. There's not necessarily unified sectors, but it's the great majority of the Bolivian grassroots, and they're protesting because they probably aren't going to have enough to eat next year. You know, there's a huge discourse on the part of the Bolivian government about the good Bolivians and the bad Bolivians, and many of the racist overtones about indigenous people and these very strong social movements that were the...
Yeah, and again, here we get back to the socialism versus capitalism. If we don't implement some socialism again in Bolivia, then as she says here, Catherine Lederber, as she says, people in Bolivia are not going to have food to eat this winter. Okay? And as she says, again, a lot of the racial undertones, which are quite explicit usually in Bolivia, the racism towards the indigenous, is reviving in a very fascist, brutal way. And so, of course, this is a tale as old as time. It's the same struggle since Simón Bolívar, for which we named the country after. The same tale of Tupac Katari, the Bolivian fighter who started the revolt against the Spanish. Right? It's the same tale again and again and again.
Backbone of the Morales government, but have also always had a very key role in Bolivian politics. The state has sent out the police, the state has sent out the armed forces. So far, they have been using tear gas and rubber pellets. But as we know, after 30 years of observing conflicts in Bolivia, when you run out of tear gas and rubber pellets, the bullets start flying. We have 2 reported fatal victims.
This video was from a week ago. What she predicts has already come true. The real bullets are flying, and everything has become a lot more militarized, and the country is heading towards a civil war.
Clear amount of injured people, but we also have an incapacity on the part of the government to govern effectively or to present solutions. And as they ended up having to pay the police a $300 bonus to go out on the streets and repress protesters, you know, the continuing participation of the security forces is unclear. A lot of this is inherited from the 2019 coup, which was facilitated by the Trump administration. And right before Paz's election, all of the cases against the military and the coup leaders and the politicians that carried out this violent coup were dropped and erased. All the charges against the violent parastate groups were erased, and the sentences were erased. So you have this pervasive impunity, but also a decision-making power that is independent of the civilian government on the part of the security forces. When you have, of course, Southcom now making agreements with the Bolivian military, going back to military representation and communication, the DEA back in Bolivia, although they have no operating budget for this year. They've been here since December 6th, and they're flying things in from Lima. We've had the extradition of a major drug not the extradition, the DEA just picked him up and took him away, no extradition process. And we're very worried that this could be a precedent for some sort of operation against Morales. As a result, the Chapare coca growing region, which you know has been completely shut down by coca growers, protecting key areas and protecting the coca grower Moss headquarters in Lauqueña.
And have they? I've seen some footage of them blocking runways. Like, have they shut the Cochabamba airport itself?
And again, a key detail there that you might have missed, but the DEA just going in and arresting Bolivian nationals far away from American soil is just imperialism, right? Impunity of the American Yankee system going in and arresting Bolivian nationals. You know, that's none of their business. If the Bolivian police want to arrest someone, the Bolivian police should arrest someone. It should not be the Americans doing it. It has to be under Bolivian law. That is called sovereignty. Otherwise, I would argue the Chinese should be allowed to go into the United States and arrest whoever they want. The Chinese should come to Europe and arrest all the genocide supporters that we have here, right? If that's how we want to function. But we don't, because we have sovereignty. And that is what, again, a tale of national sovereignty in Bolivia versus imperialism.
Completely down, or just more rural runways? Like, what are they doing to prevent the DEA and CIA and the Bolivian government from getting in and capturing Morales?
What they've done, when you remember when we went onto the anti-drug base, that airport in Chimoré near the MAS headquarters was the key portion for drug war repression. And then it became a civilian airport as well. So what they've done is they've surrounded this airport. They've covered all the landing strips. There are farmers surrounding the airport because there was a past attempt 2 years ago to shoot Evo Morales by the intelligence police, and they had flown into that airport. They've also surrounded the 9th Army Division in the Chipari and some anti-drug checkpoints. They're very, very concerned. They're very, very concerned, especially after what happened in Venezuela, the extraction of Maduro without any legal proceedings in a very, very violent invasion.
So who has the momentum at this point, that as far as you can tell? And if he did step down, then what?
Well, I think the outcome right now is unclear. This government also has lost the support of the far right. Because the security forces are not anxious to go out in the mix for a government whose lifeline is unsure, the government is really allowing the parastate groups to operate again or to get revved up. There was a march in...
Another key factor here. I wish she said it more explicitly. But if you're not hearing her, what she's saying is the political role that the right-wing government is playing is to instigate violence. So the Americans want to conquer all of South America, right? This is called the Monroe Doctrine, or as Donald Trump calls it, the Donroe Doctrine. And in order to capture all of South America, they need chaos as a pretext for the Americans to come in and provide stability. Therefore, the main point of the right-wing government is to create the civil unrest that you are seeing now as a pretext for the Americans to come in and take control of the situation under the hard hand of the American fascist government. Right? So just notice there. The DEA comes back into the country, the CIA comes back into the country, and before you know it, you have a right-wing government who is instigating a civil war between right-wing militias and left-wing militias. The point being to create instability so that the Americans have an excuse to invade Bolivia.
In La Paz, where they tore the Huipala, the indigenous flag last night. You have the Unión Juvenil Crucenista whipping mass union leaders while they're giving a protest. So they're allowing the conflict to unravel and hoping that there will be violence, or at least they have no other viable strategy. So it's not clear what's going to happen now. I mean, the government can either call a state of exception, a state of siege where they shut things down and they start firing, or they can just allow things to deteriorate. But on the right, Jorge Quiroga is anxious to take power. There's a lot of pressure from the U.S., and we see kind of dark figures in U.S. politics like Eric Prince, the former head of Blackwater, weighing in, the State Department weighing in, kind of rolling back into the time that you and I know well, where the U.S. really called the shots. And that's so different from how it has been for most of the last 20 years. It's not clear what's going to happen, but it's worrisome. And there's no key figure on the left that would take power, the vice president, because he is a populist, although I don't really think he's a progressive populist. My guess is that the right will not allow him to take power, and they'll either move down to the head of the Senate or the House of Deputies, or, an unpredictable but worrisome right-wing figure could come in.
And I know you got to run to the last question for you. What about Evo? What's his current status? I know he's been facing kind of sex crimes charges over the year.
Finally, he brings up the sex crime charges that we started with at the start of the video. But interesting point there, that the right wing will essentially disappear once they saw the chaos and the civil war that they need to instigate. Right? Very similar to how Brexit happened in the UK. You have the Brexit party, Brexit happens, and then it disappeared, nowhere to be found to deal with the chaos that Brexit leaves behind.
He's facing all sorts of attempts at prosecution. Does he have any remaining political base that could see him return to power, or is he completely kind of iced out? What's his status?
Well, that's unclear. I mean, currently there are charges brought against him for having a relationship with a girl who was apparently underage. And so there are arrest warrants out for him there. The woman, supposedly the victim and a mother of a child, says that was not the case. She didn't file a complaint. She was also persecuted and had to leave the country. They put her father in jail. So all of these things are unclear. But there's a great deal of pressure. And I think the hope on the part of this government who carry on this right-wing strategy of blaming Evo for everything, when I think the movement is much more profound than that. Evo Morales does have strong support in some sectors, but the way that he has been isolated inappropriately from Bolivian politics and a lack of representation in the Congress or a lack of national electoral opportunities has kind of generated this perverse dynamic where people don't feel that they can have a role in their government and they have to take to the streets once again. We saw this in 2003. We saw this in 2005. We've seen this many times before. So it's not clear if Evo Morales will continue to be a key figure, but right now he's locked in the Chapari and very concerned that somebody's going to come after him, and not in a way that follows due process, and not in a way that is appropriate, and not a way where he would count on a presumption of innocence or any human rights guarantees.
Right. Well, Catherine Lederber, is there a way that people can support the work you're doing?
Fantastic. Instead of plugging Catherine Lederber, I'm going to plug myself. This has been the Eurozone broadcast. It is almost 1 a.m. where I am in Amsterdam, coming live on May 31st, 2026. Well, now it's June 1st because it's past midnight. This is the Eurozone broadcast. If you enjoy a European voice who talks about politics without a filter, without falling victim to the Zionist lobby, then stick around, subscribe, like, and share this video. I know we covered South America in this video, but usually we do cover Europe, so hopefully but we do cover South America quite often just because the Americans keep trying to invade different countries there. I think the next one is going to be Cuba. So if you like this sort of content, check out the other videos, check out the live streams that we do during the weekend. If you're watching this live, I'm going to end the live stream here as well. If you're watching this pre-recorded, come join the live stream sometime. And we are fully independent. We do this for the love of the game. We don't take money from any group, so I am not beholden to anyone at all. And with that said, this has been Eurozone broadcast on the 31st of May 2026. Eat your fruits and veggies, and don't forget to exercise. I don't know, but that was a bit of a weird ending, but yeah, you get the point. Ciao, ciao. Take care of yourselves, and see you next time.